In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and with me today are
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. On today's episode of the podcast, well, we got some special announcements we want to tell you about early on in the podcast. We're going to move on into some what we've been watching, follow that up with some weekly plugs, and then conclude with an in-depth review. This week, we'll be discussing The Trial of the Chicago 7, the newest film written and directed by Mr. Aaron Sorkin. So that is what we got in store on the podcast today.
Yeah, we've been through a dry spell, Dave, on movies, and it looks like the rains are a coming.
When it rains, it pours. So for the last few weeks, it's been actually quite a struggle to figure out what we're going to be reviewing. And starting this week, today, this episode, there's tons of movies coming out, like so many that we're going to have difficulty actually covering them all. Feel free to continue to use #/tag to let us know what you'd like us to cover, what you think we should keep an eye out for. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to choose one movie per week.
Champagne problems. Yeah. We got champagne problems all of a sudden.
You know what one of my favorite lines in movies is that you'd appreciate, Jeff Kanata, is the 25th Hour, Edward Norton, Spike Lee movie.
Yeah.
What is it? Champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends. That's what he wants.
Ah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a good one. So anyway, before we get to any of that today,
which one am I? Which category am I in?
We have some.
That's a mystery.
It's okay. We have some big news, folks, and we talked about this a little bit on last week's episode of the podcast. But we are launching a Patreon. Yay! Woo! We're launching a Patreon page.
It only took us 15 years.
At patreon.com/film podcast. That's patreon.com/ and then the word film podcast, or words film podcast.
The words, the character / and the words film
the
podcast.
words
How about
film
that?
It couldn't be simpler.
We kind of joked around about this a little bit last week, but this is a real thing. We're actually launching this. Why are we launching a Patreon? Why now? Why a Patreon now during what is arguably one of the most unstable times in the history of American society? Here's some of the rationale for why we're launching a Patreon at patreon.com/film podcast.
Because much like comedy, we are masters of
timing. Finishing each other's
sandwiches.
Exactly right. So we had talked about doing this for a while, and I wasn't super familiar with the Patreon platform, but I launched my own Patreon recently at patreon.com/Dave Chen. I spent some time kind of using the different features and seeing what's possible, and I really felt like, hey, I think like we can do this in a way that is sustainable for us, produces bonus content for folks, and that actually provides some value for people who are willing to back us, right? And once we like figured out a way to do that, we're like, let's do this thing. Let's let the dogs rip on this at patreon.com/film podcast. So basically, it's extremely simple. There's 2 tiers at patreon.com/film podcast. One of them is for ad-free episodes, which actually, by the way, Jeff, I've heard from some people they actually don't want because your ad reads are so delightful.
Yeah, people want the ads.
People want the ads.
Okay, so
you put us in a horrible catch-22, Jeff.
2 things about that. First thing is there's a Manscaped ad this week, so buckle up.
Yep.
Second thing is, just because you support us at the no ad level doesn't mean you don't have to listen to the show with the ads. We're still going to be putting out the show with the ads for free for everyone in the regular RSS.
So true.
Support the show, feel good, make us happy, and also listen to the ads if you want to hear me say the word dong for some reason.
And use all those affiliate codes. It helps. Indeed. Everything helps.
So that's one level is, and actually the names of the tiers, it was a collaborative effort for these names, right? So if you are a, what is it? I'm actually trying to pull up the page right now, and it's not working because I'm logged in. So let me try going to the page from a non-logged in. Yeah, so if you are a watcher,
the Patreon website.
If you are a watcher, you get ad-free episodes of the /Filmcast.
We thought what better term for someone listening to the show than watcher.
Correct. 100% right. 100%.
Because we are geniuses.
That is a deep cut, okay?
I know.
The history of the podcast is our first name was The Watchers Podcast.
I think that's pretty great. It's pretty great.
What we do.
If you are a good sitter, which is the next tier, then you get the /Filmcast After Dark. Now, new listeners may not be aware that a long time ago we used to make a second episode every week of the podcast. Can you believe we once had the time to make a second episode every week?
Well, we do again.
Right. Yeah.
People really enjoyed the After Darks. It's basically just us kind of sitting around talking about stuff that we didn't have time to get to in the show, and it wasn't necessarily movie related. It could have been life related. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it was during an After Dark that terms like good sit or money horse were like first coined. Is like it's really
it's
when
where the real genius happened.
The show is pretty much garbage, but the After Darks, woo, choice.
Well, that was what was so kind of both gratifying and incredibly demoralizing. Is we would put a decent amount of work into the regular show, and then we put basically zero work into the After Dark, and everyone would consistently say they enjoyed the After Dark episodes more.
It's sort of like when you have a problem and your conscious mind, can't fix it. So you have to let your subconscious mind do it. And the After Dark is just us just working through all our shit, all our shit.
Yeah. So people are like,
sell it so well, Devindra.
No, you're selling it. You're selling it, Devindra.
Love it.
But people would be like, these After Darks are amazing. And I'd say, well, you mean the part we put no work into? Okay. In any case, those episodes are now back at our tier of good sitter. So if you want...
But like Brad Pitt in, what was the assassin movie?
The assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford?
No, the other one.
Killing Me Softly.
Like Brad Pitt in Killing Me Softly, we said, this is America, pay me.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
For the After Darks.
Yeah, wow. Brad Pitt has been an assassin. Actually, no, the assassination. He was Jesse James.
Assassinated.
He was assassinated in that movie.
The assassination.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Spoiler, yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, Devindra, I think you're actually talking about the next tier that we have, which is the Money Horse tier.
The best tier.
The best tier, the Money Horse, which comes with, at this moment, no additional benefits whatsoever. Other than the knowledge that you
the
are
title.
The title of Money Horse.
See, here's the thing, folks.
What's the thing, Jeff?
We've been looking for a money horse in this whole shindig for a long time, and we had it all wrong. See, you want yourself a money horse because the money horse is where you get that real revenue stream, right? You get the.
Are you tapping your vein right now? Is that sound?
That was me snapping my fingers.
Oh, okay. I thought you were tapping your
that.
vein, like we're injecting money into your veins.
Either way.
Also also the tapping of the vein thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hitch your horse right to the money horse. You hitch your wagon, that is, to the money horse, and then the money horse just keeps on a truck, and you got to find yourself a money horse. But see, we had it all wrong. We had it all wrong because you don't just want one money horse. You want a team of money horses. That was when it all clicked.
True genius. And I
Money
think
horses.
just like Steven Spielberg's Money Horse, you gain nothing, from it, but it sure is pretty and expensive looking.
I think you're satisfying.
I think you're talking about War Horse, Devindra, is what you're trying to
War Horse. But same deal. That is the inspiration of Money Horse was War Horse.
I guess. In any case, as of this moment, by the way, 12 money horses. 12 money horses.
Wow.
Yeah.
See what I said about the team of money horses? And you know what? Call me a dreamer, but I think that number can go up.
What is a team of money horses called? We need a new.
Yeah. A murder of money horses.
Money stable is what that is.
A murder of money horses. So a flock of money horses. So okay. So if you back us at the Watcher tier, you get ad-free episodes of the /Filmcast. You back us a Good Sitter or Money Horse, you get 3 bonus After Dark episodes per month. And I'm pleased to announce that our first bonus episode is going to be recorded and released today. And it's going to be about the West Wing reunion on HBO Max, plus a bunch of other things. So
And whatever else we happen to spew out of our subconscious.
Whatever else. Now, I do also want to say the flip side of this, which is, yes, this is a great way to support us and help make the podcast economically sustainable for the long term. And it is an experiment. We'll see how many people actually back us, and we'll see, whether there's enough people to make it worth it for us to keep doing these extra episodes. We'd love to keep doing them. And we'll see how it goes. It's kind of an experiment. But I also, on the flip side, I felt like COVID represented, in some ways, an existential threat to the podcast. Because I don't know if you guys know about this.
We're not just the world, but the podcast.
We're a podcast founded on reviewing new movies every week. That was really the raison d'etre of the podcast, as anyone said.
A podcast based on a functioning society where movies come out.
Where movies come out in theaters every week. And that was
it's our Buggy Whip podcast that we've been into so long. Look, these Buggy Whips could never go wrong.
Yeah. So it's new movies haven't really come out very often in the last 6 to 8 months, and it's unclear whether they will come back again. And so this is kind of a way, also, this Patreon's kind of a way to insulate ourselves a little bit from whatever might happen in the next year or two. So I do want to just acknowledge that reality as well.
Sure.
So super grateful to everyone who's already pitched in. And of course, never pitch in if it is in any way a hardship. But this is kind of a way for us to deliver bonus content, make the show economically sustainable, and kind of connect with you in a different way. And also, people often back other podcasts through Patreon, so this is a way for people to kind of keep all their backers in one place.
Oh, I love it. The thing I love about Patreon is I have a collection of just little creators that I'm helping to grow, and it feels good to see my collection and see people produce good stuff. So I'm happy to be part of that for people.
Those are human beings, Devindra.
No, Jeff, they're in my Patreon app, and they live
not,
and serve me.
They're not your collection to be toyed with.
All right. So
Wow.
also, I want to give a few details about how this is going to work exactly. So one of the reasons it took us a while to move over to Patreon is that there's a bunch of people who donated to us on PayPal, who set up recurring PayPal donations.
Which we are super grateful for. Thank you.
Yes.
Super
and
great.
when we started this podcast and started accepting PayPal donations, Patreon did not exist. There was no way to deliver.
It turns out a little company, tiny, small company like PayPal, could not figure out the Patreon model before Patreon. They're just like, hey, people, throw money to the people you love. That's it. That's the end of it. So hey, it's great.
So it didn't exist at the time. So we couldn't figure out a way to and honestly, I didn't want to go through the pain of transfer, asking people to transfer over. And also there are people who donate to this podcast every week, which by the way was also not something that I predicted. I was maybe once every 3 months we'll get one donation, and people are donating every single week. And I didn't want people who just donated. We have people who just donated this week. I didn't want people who just donated to feel oh man, you guys screwed me over because I just donated and now you're launching the Patreon. I could have used the money for the Patreon instead. So in order to kind of make up for that, what we're doing is we are going to give away all the After Darks for free on the main feed through the rest of the year. So the After Darks will show up on the main feed. They will show up later than you will get them on the Patreon. But they will show up on the main feed just as a gesture of goodwill for all the people who've been donating to us via PayPal for all the last 13 years. This is just a tiny, teensy tiny gesture to say thank you for that. Sorry that we're asking you to go through this pain of transferring over to the new Patreon feed, but we really appreciate you putting in the work to do this. People who are subscribing at the rate of a couple dollars per month, a decent way to do this. You can continue doing that if you want. We're not going to turn that away, but you're welcome to cancel it and move that over to Patreon. We'd love it if you did that, and then you can start getting these rewards if you back us at one of the levels. So wanted to call that out that we were. Go ahead.
Just to reiterate, just to be super clear, these extra bonus After Dark episodes that we're going to start doing as of tonight will be available for anyone, patron or not, through the end of the year in our main feed. Patrons who sign up at the good sit level and above will get those early. You'll get those earlier than in the main feed. And then after the first of the year, we will switch that over to just patrons at the good sit level or higher will receive the After Dark episodes.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. And on that note, we won't start really record. We're recording After Dark tonight because we have to kick the feed off, but we won't start putting these episodes out until November because no one will be charged for any patronage until November 1st. So just FYI, November is when these feeds are really going to fire up and start updating in advance. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing. This is exactly why I didn't want to do it, but you got to rip the Band-Aid off, and we're ripping the Band-Aid off. So we're doing it. So again, as Jeff said, to recap, we're giving away the After Darks for free through the rest of the year. The After Darks won't start until November, and starting in January of 2021, the After Darks will be exclusive to Patreon. So, yeah.
And thank you to everybody who has already signed up at Patreon. We sort of jokingly last week mentioned it, and already we have hundreds of people who stepped up to the plate and supported us, which feels amazing. This is our official kickoff of the Patreon. So all of you who are waiting for that official word, consider it done. You can now rush over
to
patreon.com/podcast. Film podcast, indeed.
Yeah.
Sign up.
Couple of other things I want to mention. One is that a couple people have asked about annual subscriptions. The Patreon recently did announce that they are allowing pages to have annual subscriptions. So if you prefer to pay for a whole year, possibly at a discount, that is coming at some point in the future. But I think we need to have been have a Patreon page for a couple months and have processed some payments before they'll allow us to do it. So we don't have annual subscriptions right now, but it probably will be coming at some point in the future. I wouldn't hold out until then, just because I don't know when it's going to come. But just as FYI, it's something we do plan to introduce at some point. So
I think it's also worth making clear this is all a work in progress too. This is an evolving thing based on how people respond to it, and there could be more stuff coming if it turns out people really want us. You guys like us? I don't know.
It turns out you really like us. But that said, we have put quite a bit of thought into what the existing rewards are. And there's a lot of things we left out of the existing rewards because this is what is here is what we feel like we can reasonably achieve. And so definitely open to people's suggestions on the Patreon page or at /filmcast@gmail.com. But we've already evaluated things like releasing an old feed of all the old episodes or doing a monthly hangout, things like that. We decided not to do those things very specifically in favor of what we have here. But again, always open to your suggestions. So /filmcast@gmail.com. We do think we can execute what is here and maybe more in the future, but this is a good starting point for us. Final thing I want to bring up is for the last 13 years, we have accepted one-time donations via PayPal, as I mentioned earlier. We are going to continue doing that as a way to make a one-time donation if you want to do a one-time donation for no reward whatsoever. I'm not saying I would do that if I were you, but I do want to leave it open as an option. And I think that basically the way it's going to work for now is the people who want to do shout-outs on the air, you can do that via PayPal at paypal.me/filmcast or through the other means. Shouting out is not a reward on the Patreon right now. Maybe it will be in the future, but for now, the PayPal one-time donations will be the way to get the shout-out. So that's kind of how we thought of it for now. Again, that might change, but that's kind of where we are right now. So I know that was very cumbersome and very exposition-heavy. But, the exposition...
It's the kind of thing you can expect from the new version of the show. Cumbersome and exposition heavy.
Yeah.
And you get to pay for it.
Indeed. I want to close again by saying thank you to everyone for your support of this podcast through the years, whether it's through donations, whether it's through leaving a star rating for us on Apple Podcasts, or telling someone else about the show, tweeting about the show. Your support has brought us to this point. We are trying to see whether we can set this show up for success and sustainability long into the future. And this Patreon page is one way of doing that. So thank you to everyone who supported us in the past. Thank you to everyone who's already contributed to the Patreon. It really, really means a lot. And we hope
really
that you're
does.
happy with the cool After Dark stuff we're able to come out with. We're going to be able to experiment with some more shit now. And I'm excited about that, actually. So again, patreon.com/film podcast. That's patreon.com/film podcast. Bonus episodes will start in earnest in November, although we will be doing an After Dark tonight just to kick the feed off, get us going in style. All right, let's get to what we've been watching this week. Devindra, why don't you start off? I've been talking for a while.
Sure. Let me actually just, because I was not prepared for that.
Sorry about that. Let's
It's okay.
let's take that
I'm
back.
just pulling
Let's
up
take that
the
back.
IMDb here. Let's do
Yeah,
that
no
here.
problem.
Okay.
Here,
I've been
let
watching-
me take us.
are you
Let me
gonna-
take us in. Let me just take us in.
Do
here.
it.
All right, let's move on and get to what we've been watching this week. Devindra, why don't you kick us off? I've been talking for a while.
Yeah, well, I checked out a movie called The 40-Year-Old Version on Netflix. Not The 40-Year-Old Virgin, the Steve Carell movie. This is a movie which I kind of love the title. It's just so clever because of that. Directed and written by Rada Blank and starring her as well as a playwright in New York who is, 40-something, somebody who the people, the media business, the theater business used to talk about. Somebody who had potential, somebody who was on the 30 under 30 list, and now she is 40 and not as successful as she'd like and just kind of facing a life crisis. This is a movie exploring that and also different ways for her to kind of use her skills. She kind of realizes, she can also write prose for rap. She can turn her prose into hip hop in a way. And don't roll your eyes at this as like another Hamilton thing, because I think it really uses this conceit in a lot of ways. And I believe this is also what Rada Blank did in real life too. So this was a way for her to re-energize herself creatively and just kind of find her own groove again. I think this movie is brilliant. It is just fantastic. It reminds me of like I feel like it's harkening back to the old Woody Allen stuff because it's in black and white. It's set in New York. It's really all about everyday New York for people in, in the theater business, because there's a lot of insider stuff there. But she also teaches in the New York City school. So she's dealing with kids who are, still very much teenagers trying to figure out their own ways to be creative and to write plays. And she finds herself in the rap battle scene and the underground hip hop scene in Brooklyn and throughout New York. It's all really fun and interesting. I think it's just really, really funny. This movie felt so refreshing in a way, and maybe it's just because I am missing New York very hard these days. As quiet and chill as my little Georgia suburb is, it's not New York. It doesn't have the vibrancy of it, and I think this movie is just like filled with all of that. So if you're looking for something funny and interesting and just just like energetic in a way I haven't felt from a lot of indie movies lately, check this one out. It's a 40-year-old virgin. It's on Netflix right now. Landed October 9th.
Yeah, that's the 40-year-old version on Netflix. I'm really excited about this. I'd heard great things about it, and so I'm
good.
looking forward to
Yeah.
checking it out. So that's what Devindra Hardawar has been watching. Jeff Kanata, how about you? What have you been watching this week?
Well, I've been watching over a period of time now, ever since, honestly, the Emmys. I returned for the third time to Schitt's Creek. A number of friends and strangers alike have suggested that I watch Schitt's Creek,
Mm-hmm.
and I
think
tried.
all the Emmys really suggested it too.
All the Emmys, they were the thing that kind of pushed me over the top, honestly. And
screw what
Well,
your friends
The
say.
Emmys on a quantum level all suggested it as well. Yes.
exactly. I mean, it was a pretty overwhelming Emmy night for that show. But I had tried the show before. I had taken the advice of friends and family members and strangers, and my wife and I had sat down and we had watched maybe 2 episodes, 3 episodes tops.
And that first season is rough. It is super rough.
Yeah, it was. It was one of these shows where, boy, these people are despicable, and I don't know if I want to hang out with these folks this long. It especially in the first few episodes, a lot of the jokes are just mean. And that's fine. There's a lot of humor to be found in that stuff. And I have enjoyed shows like that before, but it just didn't sit with me. My wife and I both were like, I just don't want to hang out with these people. I don't want to be around these people, despite how much we enjoyed some of the actors in other things. But I made a concerted effort to return to the show and give it a third shot. And now I have gotten all the way past the end of season 1. And I do have affection for this show. I'm into season 2 now, and I have had a number of moments where I am doubled over laughing so hard. Most of them delivered via Catherine O'Hara, who is a genius on a level that you rarely see. She is pure genius, truly a comedic superstar. And there are some moments, particularly in season 1, there's a moment where she records a commercial for a winery, and there are a number of different takes where she has difficulty saying the words that she needs to say, and the way that she does that is so unlike anything I've ever seen. It's a gag that's not original, right? The original of the person, the overconfident person having difficulty doing something simple is not a new comedic trope, but she does it in such a way that is so different and so hilarious. I hurt myself laughing at that. And there are a number of other ones. I give the show a lot of credit. There is a character that Chris Elliott plays, who is related to the titular Shit from Schitt's Creek. You know, this is a place called Schitt's Creek, and it is named thus because someone named Shit founded the town hundreds of years ago, and the descendant of that person is played by Chris Elliott. And I mean, the show, maybe I'm just oblivious, or I wasn't paying attention, or maybe everybody caught this way earlier than me. But I loved how the show slow rolled his name, because I think episode 12 or something, they're in his house and the phone rings and he picks it up and he goes, "Roland Shit." And I realized the whole time they'd been calling him Roland, but his name is Roland Shit. And I was like, kudos, show. Kudos on the slow play of the name. So well done.
That's all they had to do for you, Jeff.
That's all they had to do. Like,
you're a simple man with simple pleasures.
I'm a simple man. They called him Roland the whole time. I knew his name, but they'd never said it together until like many episodes into season 1, where he answers the phone, and I was like, his name is Roland Shit. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Sorry,
anyway.
I feel like I'm missing something here. What is the pun exactly, Jeff?
Roland Shit. Roll in shit.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
I don't know. It made me laugh.
The Roland threw me off. I was like,
roll in shit? But it sounds like you're saying roll in shit. It sounds like you're saying roll in shit.
Yeah.
Because if I say roll in shit or roll in shit, it's pretty similar, man.
So they're playing by
like fucking puns work.
They're playing by like
puns
Jeff.
To you.
They're playing by Jeff Limerick rules, basically.
Wow.
How dare you? How dare you?
Those are going to win Emmys eventually, right?
Yes, thank you. By that logic, thank you, Devendra. I am a professional poet. How dare you?
It's true.
By every definition, I'm a professional poet. Anyway, I love Catherine O'Hara. I think Eugene Levy and Dan Levy and Annie Murphy, I guess. Yeah, Annie Murphy is I didn't know her name before, but she's great too. I think all of them are really good. The core family, and I did over the course of the first season warm to them, and they grow, right? They humanize, they become less unlikable over the course of season 1, you know. And I also think that I've long held a theory that people are like, well, you just have to get through the first season of something, and I always feel like, you know what, if you spend that many hours with anything, you will like it, right? There's nothing where you're like, if you just watch a whole season of something, you'd be like, no, this is still terrible. It's like, no, you acclimate to it. You know, you
Actually, I
you
have a
become-
really good counterexample to that
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
episode that we're going to talk about.
I'm the
later.
exact
Oh.
opposite of
Yeah.
that
Yep.
in every way.
Yep.
But
But
yeah.
go
you
ahead.
guys keep watching things you hate, and I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No, I will give up on a show, but also say like, hey, I've stopped shows because of that, and I actually stopped watching Lost when it got really dumb. Pretty much halfway through because of that. So, it's a give and take. But this seems like, let me just say, like this show does the rare thing of making a complete turnaround, and that doesn't always happen because oftentimes a show will have a rough start, right? And it takes a while to find some footing, but even the footing isn't good enough to be really watchable or interesting. I think *Halt and Catch Fire* is the last show I can think of that made a turnaround from being not so great, like a not so great Mad Men thing, to being one of the best goddamn shows on TV. And this show somehow pulled that off too.
well, I don't know if I'm willing to go. Schitt's Creek is one of the best goddamn things on TV. I mean, again, I'm only in season 2. There's more to watch, and I will stick with it. I'm enjoying this show a lot. I don't think it's a Parks and Rec or a
Right,
30
right,
Rock or a, it's not, it's not a Happy Endings or Cougar Town for me. It's not like the
It's not
shows
even a
that
good
I
place, like in terms of what it's doing. Yeah.
Right. I find it to be very funny and smart and well made, but it hasn't sort of cracked that next level for me of, I wouldn't be one of those people who is like, you have to watch Schitt's Creek. Oh my God. I do say that about Dave or Ted Lasso, or, there are shows that I feel that kind of intensity about, like, you have to watch these shows. Schitt's Creek has not reached that level. Maybe it'll still gain in my esteem as I continue through it, but I'm definitely continuing to watch it and enjoying it.
All right. Well, that's Schitt's Creek. How are you watching it, Jeff?
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a Netflix show, but
No.
it is the way everybody has watched Schitt's Creek. It's kind of funny.
I'm going to give a little teaser for the After Dark episode we're recording that patrons are going to get tonight, which is last week Jeff tweeted the following: "The West Wing staged reading on HBO Max is the single greatest thing I've watched all year. Absolutely essential viewing. It is everything I love about drama and heart and civic duty. It's inspiring and magical and nostalgic and stirs my soul to a time when the world wasn't afire." So Jeff tweeted that. Then he texted me and Devindra. He's like, "This thing is incredible." So I said, you know what? Devindra and I, we're both going to watch this thing. Let's talk about it in the After Dark. So Devindra and I both watched the West Wing reunion along with Jeff Kanata, and we will be discussing it in today's After Dark, which is the first one of these After Darks we've had in a while. So again,
Excited to talk about that with you guys. Thank you for watching it.
yeah, patrons will get that at patreon.com/filmpodcast tonight. And the other thing I want to mention before we move on is Jeff said just now, seemingly jokingly, but maybe not, that he fits every definition of the professional poet. We did get this email from Bobby that I need to read on the air.
There's no joking, dude. There's no joking with that. I'm a professional poet.
He is. He's getting paid for it. It's great.
Sub-
That's the definition.
Subject line. Well, okay, Jeff, sorry. So, first of all, Jeff, sorry. I was just trying to, in case anyone
Do
in the
not
audience thought you
besmirch
were
Jeff's
joking.
cameo clout, okay?
Yeah, in case
right.
someone in the audience thought you were joking, I wanted to correct that misconception, okay?
Man, you know what, Dave? If you understood how much Danish Syed told me that I should do this, if you understood the motivation that, it took to get me to become a professional poet, I don't think
If
you would
only somebody
besmirch it.
believed in Jeff. If only somebody.
Yeah, that's all I needed was some friend to believe in me.
So Bobby L writes into /filmcast@gmail.com with the following subject line: Browning, Dickinson, Shakespeare, Kanata? ?
Oh, I'm already in love with this.
Bobby writes in, "I'm a high school teacher, a high school English teacher in Columbus, Ohio, and I think you three, specifically one of you, will find this exciting. We're still fully digital at this point of the semester, which is probably best considering Ohio just set its record number of daily cases both of the past 2 days. Digital learning has been interesting, to say the least, especially as a creative writing teacher without as much face-to-face workshop time with the kids, but it's opened the door to some interesting lesson opportunities. Regardless, I've been creating and recording weekly videos covering different types of poems for the students to explore and play around with. I've taught dramatic monologues of the poems of Robert Browning, meaning and metaphor with Dickinson. Sonnets are on the docket with Shakespeare. And just last week, I had another poetic form to cover, the limerick. I thought, Whose poems could I use that would be as entertaining, understandable, and fit the form of the limerick better than those of our own Jeff Kanata? I like how, by the way, Bobby says our own Jeff Kanata. Like, you belong to the world now, Jeff. Not to mention, I teach at an art school with a ton of film fans that are also in my media studies class. Talk about a win-win. I typed up and played clips from the episodes with the limericks on Endgame, Men in Black International, shit movie, but Jeff's limerick fit the form really well. And all 3 of the Hamilton limericks, boy, did those get a positive reaction. Lots of huge theater fans at school. I marked the limericks all up, showing the syllable counts and rhymes and how they fit the pattern. Needless to say, I received a ton of really cool and inspired limericks this past week after that listen. Much of that thanks to Jeff and his constant enthusiasm for this fun little form, and Dave for his relentless, merciless, ruthless iron fist. Some of them even wanted more examples from Jeff. I don't think you can get any more professional than selling these, of which I'm going to need to buy one soon, and having them taught in a real classroom alongside these other titans. Thanks again for helping to keep me and all of your other listeners sane throughout all of this. It's really great to always have this constant. I started listening to this as a high schooler, not knowing what the hell I wanted to do with my life, consistently listened through the college and grad school years that had multiple major changes, and here we are in my second year of teaching, getting to use the podcast in my lessons. Pretty neat. Stay safe, everyone. Bobby.
Well, I'm framing that email on my wall, and I will forward it to my mom and my wife, and maybe to you, Dave. Maybe you need to read that periodically.
I think I actually just did read it, just on the air just now.
That's true. That's a good point. Wow, that's extremely flattering and amazing. Well, you started by deriding my rhyme scheme by saying "Roland shit" is like a version of my thing.
First of all, I don't think you fully understood what I was trying to say, Jeff. Which is this is a pun that plays a little bit fast and loose with the rules, which is kind of how I feel about your limericks. Not saying that's necessarily a bad thing.
And a freaking English teacher just told me that my limericks are exactly the perfect exemplar of the rules.
Yeah, I mean,
there you go.
I question it.
QED.
I question it.
QED, David. I want to say a couple of things. Firstly, I want to thank the Academy. No, this is an amazing email, and I'm so grateful for that. Also, want to say cameo.com/Jeff Kanata.
Yep.
If you would like a limerick of your own, bespoke, made specifically for you. The limerick is the people's poem. It doesn't take just because I'm a
poem
professional.
Of the masses. It's the poem of the masses.
Just because I'm a professional doesn't mean it's out of reach for every listener. Let us all limerick. The limerick belongs to all.
Yeah.
What is that phrase? What is the phrase? You don't need to be smart to enjoy a limerick, but you're dumb if you don't, or something like that.
I haven't heard that, but that's good. I like that.
No, I don't. That's not actually a phrase. But I'm glad that people are enjoying your limericks. Also, really striking about that email, Jeff, is the fact that we often comment about the fact that like people have gone through all these life phases while listening to the podcast. Meanwhile, we're still here doing the podcast.
Yeah.
This guy has gone through multiple majors, gone to college, basically had his entire life flash before his eyes, or had major breakthroughs. Had major breakthroughs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, we're still waiting on those.
We're still here on the /Filmcast.
We figured out a Patreon page. That's what we figured out.
Yeah, patreon.com/filmpodcast. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done.
Also, I'm now synonymous with Shakespeare and Dickinson. So there you go.
This is a question of like, what does one need? Like, I understand. I'm not saying you're not a professional poet, but I'm saying like,
because you would be factually incorrect if you said that.
But I'm saying like, how does one become like what if one is to become a poet? Like what does one use as the bar for whether they are a professional one? Grant
money.
Yeah, is it grant money? Is it they're published? Like, is it they're making lots of money from it? As you are, you're
the definition. The definition of professional is that you are paid for services rendered.
Yeah,
that's the definition of professional,
and you get paid for it.
Yeah,
seems pretty simple.
So I guess like you must make poetry that is that has some kind of mass appeal, is what you're saying.
No,
In
I'm
order
saying
to-
you have to get paid money to do it.
Well, also,
That's-
and I'll say
that's the
this: a lot of
textbook.
people create art and don't actually get paid for it, and I don't want to devalue that either. I think
No,
it
it's
might
not
be an
devalued.
institution
It's
of
just
it. Yeah,
by
yeah.
definition amateur. And
Yes.
amateur is a pejorative for some, but if you're using the definition of it, the definition is you are not paid to do it, and the definition of a professional is that you are paid to do it. That's the dictionary. So I don't say, if I'm an amateur a lot of things that I still take a lot of pride in and enjoy. I'm not saying being an amateur anything is a bad thing, but I'm saying by the literal definition of professional, I'm a poet, baby.
You're a poet, and we didn't even know it. As they
Oh.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to what I've been watching. I'll mention a couple things. I watched a movie called American Murder: The Family Next Door. Have you guys heard of this movie?
Of course you watched that movie,
Yeah,
Dave.
another feel-good David
Of
Chen story.
Of course. I mean, if I had to bet money on what you were about to bring up, it would be American Murder.
So you guys
These are
will
the
never.
late night texts we get from Dave. By the way, is you up? What's up? American Murder, The Family Next Door.
I assume you guys are never going to watch this, so I can tell you about the movie. Yes.
Yeah.
I know about it. I'm probably going to see it at some point, but yeah.
Okay. Well,
This
so
is very on brand for you, Dave.
I'm
That's all
gonna reveal some
Yeah.
details of the actual case that this was about. Okay. So American Murder: The Family Next Door covers the case of Shannon Watts, and one day her and her 2 children vanish, and her husband, Chris Watts, is like, I don't know where my wife and kids are. Like, please, he goes on TV. He's like,
Yeah.
please come home.
Hands in his pockets. I don't know where my
let,
family
let-
is.
let me
What?
no, I know nothing about this. Let me guess. Let me just speculate wildly that old Chris Watts knows where the family is.
That is accurate, Jeff. That is accurate. So let me say this. This movie is really interesting because no talking heads, no reenactments. Virtually the entire movie is just existing footage, right? A lot of it was body cam footage from police officers, which is really amazing because you don't see those often as part of the narrative of true crime documentaries. And it's just like showing you things as they unfolded. Half of the footage is like security camera, body cam footage, that kind of stuff, and the other half is videos taken from Shannon Watts's Facebook page. This woman put so much of her life online that they were able to basically construct half of a documentary of her life just using her Facebook posts.
Future, baby. That's it. In the future, there could be a documentary about every human being on the planet.
Yep. So it's really interesting construction. There's a lot of advantages to this construction, which is, first of all, I mean, the movie is like 83 minutes or something. It's very short. And I was never bored because there's this momentum of like you're kind of learning about the situation through like these like primary sources, this like real-time sources, right? And so the documentary has this great momentum to it. It feels super authentic because you're using actual footage, obviously. There's downsides to the approach too. One of them is when you have talking head interviews and stuff like that, you can dive more deep. Like, usually in true crime documentaries, you have other people commenting on that person's mindset, right? They'll be like, oh, so-and-so was thinking this at the time, or so-and-so felt this at the time. And you don't get any of that in this movie. So you only have the primary sources to go on. It's a really interesting experiment. And I would recommend it, like watching it just for that reason alone. It's like a really interestingly put together documentary just from these sources. The nature of the crime is really horrifying, and I'm just gonna have to say I don't think I'm gonna be able to forget this, guys. I think this thing's gonna haunt me for quite a while because what happens in the documentary and what happened in real life. This case was like headlines all around the country, and what you find out happens is that Chris Watts murdered his wife and 2 kids so that he could run away with his mistress. And
As one does.
he murdered them and he lied about it for weeks. And you see all this footage of Chris Watts playing with his kids, being like a really good father. And then even in the aftermath, when his wife is vanished and like The police are there. They're questioning him. He seems like a totally normal guy. Like I was actually the whole first time I'm watching this, I'm like, I have no idea if he actually did it. Maybe it's an unfortunate they were kidnapped or something. I have no idea. But no, it turns out he had murdered them and lied about it for months. And it just, I'm just like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Like these people, like there's people that just like look normal. They look completely like a loving father, loving husband, and inside there's something about them that just one day snaps, and they murder people in like really cold blood, brutal fashion. And I mean, I'm not going to describe the details of the crime because it's really horrifying. But
either that or they were always a sociopath and just never acted on it.
Sociopaths work is that they seem normal, but you never know what's actually going on. Yeah,
maybe, but
that's what's more scary.
But I would argue, he's not a sociopath. Like he seems like legitimately remorseful about the killings. It's just he was pushed that removes culpability from him. He felt like he was trapped. He was pushed into this outcome, and it's chilling. It's chilling because you like. I guess when you watch Law and Order and stuff like that, or even other true crime documentaries, you start thinking to yourself, "Oh, like I think I can like be pretty good at spotting a killer." You know, like I'm like maybe a B-, C+. You know, like I could maybe some of the time. But then you see this guy, Chris Watts. Like other people will say, "Oh, well, I knew it was him all along." That's fine. Good for you. You're smart. But for me, I'm like watching this super loving father. You know, seems like a nice guy, and then one day just up and kills his wife and 2 kids. I'm not gonna be able to forget about it. Like this movie's gonna haunt me for a long time because just that someone like that is capable of that. Anyway.
Well, now you've haunted us too.
I would definitely not suggest you watch it, Jeff Kanata, as a father of 2 children yourself.
No need to worry about that happening.
So anyway, that's American Murder: The Family Next Door. It's on Netflix right now. Really interesting documentary, and I'd say, worth checking it out if you are interested in true crime. Just like an interesting approach. It's rare I've seen anything like it before. So, I would recommend it. I had a chance to finish Raised by Wolves Season 1 this week. Have any of you guys finished Raised by Wolves Season 1?
I still have not.
What
I'm
episode
behind.
are you on, Jeff?
Gosh, 5, I think.
I will not reveal any of the plot details of the final episodes of the season. I will just say that this is a show that began as one of my favorite shows of the year, and by the end, in my opinion, is completely off the rails, jump the shark, bonkers, bonkers, batshit. Like,
that's a bummer.
I really feel like they there's times when you're watching a show whose story is unfolding in a way that you feel like the storytellers have lost control. And that happened with Game of Thrones the last season, and it happened with the last 2 episodes of Raised by Wolves Season 1. Consistently one of the most visually interesting shows on television, consistently really, really good at world building until its last few episodes. And yeah, I just thought it just completely spun wildly out of control. And can't really talk about it because I don't want to give anything away, but I was very disappointed by the ending, and I'm not looking forward to season 2. So that's where I am with Raised by Wolves.
Now I want to catch up just to have an opinion of my own.
Yeah,
but I'm really disappointed.
Prove me wrong, Jeff. Prove me wrong.
I try every episode.
Every moment of every episode is what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And finally, I had a chance to finish off Lovecraft Country Season 1. Any of you finished Season 1? Or
I have not seen the finale yet, but I'm pretty caught up. Yeah. Otherwise.
I did an in-depth discussion of this on my personal Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Chen, but it's a bit of a bumpy ride, Season 1, I thought. Definitely like more coherent than Raised by Wolves Season 1. So it's not like completely nonsense by the end.
It is a bit whiplash with Lovecraft Country, right? Because you go from like the great first episode to the terrible second episode, then to it's all over the place. But I do like a lot of the stuff in the middle.
It found a little bit more of its footing by the end.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would say that the thing about Lovecraft Country is it's an anthology series, right? So like every episode's kind of like a monster of the week, but it also has this long season running through line about like what's happening with Tick's ancestors and stuff like that. That long running season wide story arc is very bad. Like it's
Yes,
executed very
yes.
poorly.
Yeah.
And everything that's not that is actually really well done. So like the monster of the week, introducing the new characters every week, all that stuff is really good. And everything that is like what's going on with Tick's ancestors and the book of names and all that stuff is rough. It's very rough.
Mhm.
And so the end of season 1, I feel like the season was a pretty mixed bag. But it was consistently one of the most visually interesting shows on television. And
Yeah.
there's some amazing body horror, amazing visual effects. And so ultimately, I still feel okay recommending it because it has some great stuff in it. It has some great stuff in it. So, Devindra, what episode are you on right now?
I'd say the same. I mean, I'm the one right before the finale,
I see,
so I just
gotcha.
didn't get to catch up. But yeah, there's so much. I almost had written off the show completely because we talked about it again after episode 2, which was just felt like bad, like an
Yeah,
awful,
very, very
weird
bad.
way to wrap up that storyline.
They
But
definitely found
then-
their footing throughout the season.
Yeah.
I think they got the
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
The episodes got better as the show went on. So
Yeah, they got a lot better. Although I think the pilot itself was super strong too. But yeah, it just seems like it's a show that always handled too much at once, and sometimes it all spins out of control and gets kind of crazy. But then, there's some good stuff. There's the episode set in Korea, which I think is really, really well done. There's
Bold,
kind of a time
bold.
travel-y one. Yeah, there's so many great ideas, and also consistently, a show that's dealing with the Black experience in America, especially during an age where things were even worse. So it doesn't shy away from that, and I respect it for that. Like, it has a backbone where I think a lot of shows just are bad without actually saying anything.
yeah, well, that's Lovecraft Country season 1. Mixed bag, but still a lot to recommend. Jeff, is this something you think you're going to catch up with one day?
I thought I was. Episode 2, man, I was so
really
high on the
just
show
threw
after
you off
episode.
the
It's
show.
not good.
Yeah.
It just
yeah.
threw me off the show, and then there was all these other things to watch. I'm on to Fargo, and I'm on to these other things, and it's like the
I hear
idea
you.
of climbing back on that hour-long drama train is a little hard for me. But
Yeah, that's
maybe.
another thing too. Like the episodes are 1 hour each, and
Yeah.
Mhm,
the
mhm.
difference. I was watching the first few episodes of Raised by Wolves. Some of those are like 40 to 44 minutes, and it's just like honestly such a relief to watch a 44-minute hour of television. Sometimes I'm just like, oh
A
man, like
44-minute hour.
yeah, you know what I mean?
love
Like
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like yeah, this is just so luxurious. I have time at the end.
Oh,
Time at the
man.
end to get up, go to the
I
bathroom.
could
before the
do
next one.
other things in my life than watch a show. Wow. Yeah.
All right.
Oh my.
That's
That is
what
kind of how I feel about that show, by the way. So I will not be catching up on Raised by Wolves, probably.
That's too bad. There's some good stuff in it.
There,
Anyway.
I've seen the first couple episodes. I'm good. I think I'm fine. Yeah.
The first episode, I think, is a masterpiece.
Yeah,
I love that
it's really
first
good.
episode.
It's really good.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we've been watching this week. Let's thank people who donated to our podcast via the conventional way on PayPal. Thanks to new subscriber James Soltis, and thanks to new donors Satakal Casa, at Worst Editor Ever on Twitter, Marshall Smith, Eric Webster, and Jack G from Atlanta, Georgia, who writes, Jack G from Atlanta, Georgia, comma, and also Cody, who writes, as Dave can attest, I'm a longtime listener, but I've never taken action to donate. Pitiful. Today, I finally hit that PayPal button to say thank you for all you do. You're absolutely wonderful humans and deeply talented storytellers. I can't overstate how much joy you bring to your listeners, and as our industry waxes and wanes, your distinct voices are more appreciated than ever. Thanks again. That's from Cody.
Thanks, Cody.
He works in the industry, in the entertainment industry. So it's a very, very kind note from Cody. We also got a donation from the Slack Filmcast at slackfilmcast.com. It's a Slack group for people who are listeners of the Slack Filmcast. Last week, we read an email from Soren and Michelle, the first couple that we know of to ever have gotten married, who met because of their fandom of the Slash Filmcast. This week, we got a very significant donation from the Slack Filmcast a group of whom donated on behalf of Soren and Michelle, and they wrote in the following: "This donation is made as a wedding gift for Michelle and Soren, who met through the Slack that David created for fans of the podcast. We couldn't be more excited when they announced that they were getting married, and very honored that the Slack got invited to watch the live-streamed wedding ceremony and to join a Zoom call for celebrations afterwards. It was such a wonderful time, and we wish you all the happiness for your future together. From your friends on the Slack Filmcast." So that comes in.
You know, they
That's
also.
lovely.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
amazing.
they got a
This is-
cameo,
this-
right? They got a cameo too.
That's
right?
exactly. I was just about to say they
Aw.
ordered a limerick from my cameo. The Slack Film Cast, as a cumulative group, ordered one for Soren and Michelle. So I was very pleased to do that one. It's one of my favorites that I've done, because what a wonderful story, these two meeting because of our show, through the community of our show. It's pretty special, and I'm so happy for the both of them. They seem very, very happy. Living now in, I think, Germany. Moved to Germany from Brazil, right? Yeah.
Yeah, really glad that that all came as a result of this Slack Filmcast, and it's just it's really heartwarming, really heartwarming.
It really is.
All right, gents. Cody, who wrote in a donation this week, also wrote in the following: "I would like to offer up 2 cutdowns of your weekly plugs bumper with utmost respect and credit to Noah Ross, who did the original music." And Cody has given us 2 cutdowns of the weekly plugs bumper. Now, the weekly plugs bumper, I think, runs usually around 20 seconds, right? And he's given us 2 versions, one of which is 8 seconds, one of which is 5 seconds, to see if we can shorten it down. So I'm going to play the weekly plugs bumpers for you and see what you guys think, okay?
Yep.
So here's version 1. Here we go. That's version 1 of the updated weekly plugs bumper.
Yep. Yep.
Here's version 2. This is 5 seconds. That one
They-
feels like an incomplete thought to me.
They live up to the name of cut
Yeah.
downs.
Cut down.
you know?
Yeah. I'm waiting for the one that's just the opening beat and just like
Bound
yeah,
chicka, bound
that's it.
chicka, weekly.
That's it.
Maybe I don't think I'm going to use number 2, but I could see adding 1 to the rotation sometimes.
Sure.
So anyway, it's time for weekly plugs, a part of the show where we plug something we've been working on or that we support. I want to plug an episode of Culturally Relevant, which you can find at culturallyrelevantshow.com. I interviewed Richard Rushfield this week, who writes a very biting, acerbic newsletter called The Ankler. We talked about how Hollywood as we know it is coming to an end. It's the end of Hollywood as we know it. But we kind of feel fine. Actually, we don't. We actually feel terrible. But you can listen to that at culturallyrelevantshow.com or wherever your podcast can be downloaded. Just check out Culturally Relevant. That's my weekly plug. How about you, Devindra?
Yeah, we talked about the iPhone 12 and all the fun stuff Apple announced last week on the Engadget podcast. So be sure to check that out. But I feel like my main recommendation this week is the thing I've been enjoying over the past couple of nights, which is Patrick Williams' series on Francis Ford Coppola. Guest of the show, great YouTuber in general. I think this series is a great exploration of Coppola's career and kind of how he went from being just this like young genius who was winning all the awards and making these, these incredible films to a guy who just started experimenting. Like he tried to build his own studio, right? He tried to buck the studio system. It failed. It was a complete disaster, and he was never the same again. And it's just a really fascinating exploration, because if you don't think about what happened to this guy, it's easy to think like, what did happen to Francis Ford Coppola? What, the guy who made all the Godfather movies and Apocalypse Now, how did his career go the way it did? I think Patrick does a great job of kind of breaking it down, so it's worth a watch, and check it out on his YouTube channel.
All right.
Yeah, man. I got a chance to see Francis Ford Coppola in person, and it was at an event. I can't remember where. It must have been some video gaming event or some, I don't know, some event I was at, and he was debuting this thing with Val Kilmer. That was his new.
Was it the vampire thing?
It was. I think it was vampires, but it was like the idea of it was that you construct the movie yourself on various devices.
We saw
and
that at Comic-Con.
It was at Comic-Con. Yeah, that's what it was.
That was
Holy hell.
Twixt.
What a. I remember at the time going, I can't be the only one here
yeah.
that would raise my hand in your meeting and go, "This is a terrible idea." You know, like.
But then he says, "I'm Francis Ford Coppola. Shut up."
I
And he keeps
guess.
going. You
I
know, so
guess,
that's
but you
basically
know,
it.
I turned out to be the one who was right in that situation.
I don't think that thing got released as like a movie. You can actually stream it now. But yeah, the idea was that you could rearrange scenes of Twix, or he would do it on like road shows of the movie
He
or
said it was
something.
like
I don't know.
composing. He would compose the
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
live like a musician, and it's just like this is not a good idea, Francis.
But hey, well, if you want to know like more of how he got to that point, check
Yeah.
out Patrick's series. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah, that's great. I've been doing commentary videos with Patrick on his videos on his second
nice.
channel too, so we'll be talking about that as well as reviewing Apocalypse Now, Final Cut at some point. But great series of videos. Jeff Canada, what is your weekly plug?
Well, I want to do two now as well. My first is a new show. I think I mentioned once before here. A new show I'm doing a stream on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific. It's called the Fan Controlled Show. Actually, it's called the show formerly known as the Fan Controlled Show. Why? Because fans control it. And so every week the fans decide on a new name for the show. And last week we were called Jacob and the Other Guys because Jacob is the behind the scenes tech wizard that handles the streaming of the show. And the fans decided that it should be called Jacob and the Other Guys. Every week it'll be something new, and it is in support of the fan-controlled football league, which will be launching in early February. But up until that time, it's a football league headed up by a bunch of luminaries: Mike Tyson, Richard Sherman, Quavo the rapper. There's a whole bunch of really cool people involved, including Greg Miller from Kind of Funny, who owns a team. And the fans decide on everything, every single thing. They decide who the coach is. They decide who the players are. They decide on the draft of the players. They decide on the plays that are run. They decide on the logos of the teams, the team names, the jersey designs. Every single thing is controlled by fans. And it's a real football league with real elite athletes that's going to be playing games. And so we're the official podcast stream. You can find us on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/FCF, which stands for Fan Controlled Football. And I think that brings me to a great segue to the other thing I want to mention, which is vote. Make a plan to vote. It feels really, really, really good to vote. You can vote right now in most states. I think all the states. You can vote early. You can vote and make sure your vote is counted. You can figure out how to do that. You can drop off your vote. If you're voting by mail, you can vote super early. You can track your ballot in a lot of states as well. Vote. Go to vote.org and find out exactly how to make a plan. I promise you, it feels really good to participate. Vote.
Can I add something onto this, Jeff? Because another thing happening, I'm talking to people feel like they're powerless, right? That their vote doesn't matter, that they're not like really doing enough, even though it seems like things are pretty terrible right now. One thing that's really good you could do with several organizations or whatever campaign you're supporting is volunteer, because right now it's very easy. You sit through a Zoom trading and you can text on behalf of your candidate or choice, or do phone calls, or that's pretty much the main thing. The door-to-door is not a great idea right now, but that's happening too. But I think you could do a lot of stuff from the comfort of your home while being safe during the pandemic. Take some action, because everything matters right now. Everything is on the line, pretty much.
Great plug, Jeff. Appreciate that. Vote, because this thing needs to be a blowout, guys. Just put that out there. So anyway, I hope everyone's voting.
I would love. There's nothing that I would love to see more than a record turnout.
Yep.
Like if we got, it was about 60% of Americans voted in 2016. If we got to like 80%, it would be amazing. It would be historic, and it would be pretty special. So I'd love to see that.
You have the power.
Do it.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, this is where ad insertion point 3 will go. Hey, Jeff, you're coming. I realized, by the way, you're coming in a little bit hot. Do you mind turning your gain down a little bit? I'm looking at the levels right now, and you're very.
Is that better right there? Does that change anything?
A little bit more than that, maybe? Just a tiny bit more?
Yeah, your waves are big.
Yeah, your waves
Making
are
big
really
waves over here.
Yeah.
You got big waves?
You got big waves, dude.
How's that? Is that better?
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
How about there?
My waves are so
that's a little too
small.
much. That's a little too much.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, that's good. Just the girth
Oh,
of
by
these
the way,
waves,
the Zencaster waves are you should not go by the,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
size of the
I
waves
know
of
that we'll do
Zencaster.
post processing, but like even just comparing me, you, and Devindra, they're all like vastly
Yeah.
different waves. So
No,
like,
I know, but that
yeah.
doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. The
All right.
visualization in Zencaster is arbitrary. It means
that's fine.
absolutely
That's
nothing.
fine. I also have a meter on my computer as well, and it's
Okay.
showing you as very.
I mean, if I sound hot, that's good. I would say just don't use the visualization of Zencaster as any kind of indicator.
that makes
'cause it
sense.
it's based on nothing.
Acknowledged. All right, here we go. That brings us to the all right, that brings us to our review of the Trial of the Chicago 7. Give me a second. Okay. That was from the trailer of The Trial of Chicago 7, newest film written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. The story of 7 people on trial stemming from various charges surrounding the uprising at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. Well, I think Aaron Sorkin has had a bit of a mixed record, right? He's made some amazing things that I really love and I'm a huge fan of. I'm thinking of, for me, specifically things like The West Wing, one of my favorite shows of all time. Devindra, you and I bonded originally over Sports Night, one of the first things
Definitely.
we ever
Sports Night.
watched together.
I love Sports Night.
That was a
Man.
great show.
Ugh.
And I also like some of his movie work. You know, I actually, despite not liking it and and being resistant to it at first, like Steve Jobs has won me over.
Steve Jobs, man. Steve
won
Jobs
me
is
over.
great.
I like it.
Come
You know,
on.
it has the same problems as all of Aaron Sorkin's other work, which is, for instance, he writes women not that well sometimes. But I like it. You know, Few Good Men, huge fan. I really enjoyed
Molly's
Molly's
Game is great too.
Yeah, really enjoyed Molly's
and
Game.
Moneyball just hit Netflix, and I think it was like tracking in the top 10. Moneyball's a great movie, underrated movie.
I don't think it's underrated. It was rated pretty highly, but yeah. It's definitely worth watching. That's one movie I wish I loved more because it's I just don't care about the subject matter as much as some people. Yeah.
So mixed bag, but he's done some great things. He's also done some like pretty cringy things. I would say Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip was bad in my opinion.
You the words the newsroom better not pass your lips right now, David Chen. Because
I love
Jeff,
Newsroom.
You love the you guys both like the Newsroom?
The newsroom is I think the concept is kind of terrible, and so much of it is an excuse for Aaron Sorkin to like basically rewrite history in his way. But I do kind of love that show.
I
just
love
in
it
terms
so
of
much.
I love the characters and the stakes of what they built with it. But yeah, it is very much an Aaron Sorkin show, and maybe that was the start of his like his new sequence of events. Like now he's directing, now he's doing things differently.
Well,
so we've listed. I don't what is the. You started out this by saying Aaron Sorkin so uneven. Oh, we can all agree he's so uneven. And then we've listed everything he's done in the positive column. What's the except for Studio 60? Is that was the only uneven one?
Well, I would say Studio 60. I think
Newsroom
is like bad as well. So I don't agree with you there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
I think Molly's Game is a hit or miss movie.
And
like
they're
so good.
Yeah. Look, Jeff, you and I. Okay, so overall, we on the /Filmcast like more of Aaron Sorkin stuff than we dislike, right?
Sure.
So we're pretty big fans overall. Devindra Hardawar, I think we all had high expectations of the Trial of Chicago 7. What do you think of it?
Do you guys watch Bob's Burgers? Because I just feel like the character who's just like all the time. This feels like an Aaron Sorkin version of a major event from the 60s. It feels like Aaron Sorkin kind of rewriting history in his way, similar to the Newsroom. But let me just say, like, since I've started watching Aaron Sorkin stuff, and since I think at first with like Sports Night and West Wing and everything, I was wowed by his sense of character and his sense of dialogue and everything. But since then, I do think a little more differently, I guess, about the way politics is portrayed. And his idea, his like fairy tale version of liberalism is a weird thing to watch now. So seeing him basically tell the story, which is about people who are resisting the Vietnam War in a very like public way, really putting themselves on the line. This is a movie about revolution and resistance, and I don't think that's what the story is about. But the movie feels like it is just the Aaron Sorkin Hollywood version of that. It feels watered down. It feels weak. I don't think it's a bad movie, and I can see why so many people enjoy it. But there's so many things in this movie that really, really just make me roll my eyes. I think I alluded to the opening earlier, which has a for some reason probably the worst Daniel Pemberton score I've ever heard. But the just this really jaunty orchestrated orchestral music over major historical events, which include the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the assassination of JFK. There are so many weird things in this movie that just feel
RFK,
like
actually.
yeah. But very, very bad directorial choices or stylistic choices. I think most of the actors are woefully miscast. Just so distracting. Eddie Redmayne in this movie, I cannot buy. I can barely buy him as an American. I think like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just his cheekbones and just like his like beautiful, beautiful looks. But he feels like he's in the wrong movie. Jeremy Strong is doing something in this movie that feels like Tommy Chong meets Garth from Wayne's World. It is not working for me. There's a lot of little bits of things like this of just like the performance is not quite gelling. I think the script is all right, but what it really comes down to is that this movie just feels like it is the Hollywood version of the story in the way that it also I don't think it does justice to the story or to the characters. In particular, this is something I tweeted, but the way this movie treats just look up uh
Bobby Seale, is that what you're thinking of?
Bobby Seale. Yeah, Bobby Seale right now. That's what I'm looking up right now. Um the way, and this gets into spoilers, so I don't know how much we care, but one of the biggest, things history remembers from this trial is the fact that Bobby Seale was bound and gagged by the judge because the judge thought he was being disruptive because he was speaking up for himself and basically yeah, I don't know, just like messing up the rhythm of the court, and the judge didn't like it, and there were a lot of racial undertones with that in this movie. The scene where that happens, we see glimpses of the cops beating up Bobby Seale very quickly, and then we see Bobby Seale sitting in court, and it looks bad, but it seems within 5 to 10 minutes that situation is resolved. Bobby Seale sat in court for days bound and gagged.
3 days, in
And
fact.
and it seems strange to me that Aaron Sorkin simplified that in a way for to tell a better story to him, whereas I think the real story here, the real like story of revolution, is that this guy went through all this fighting against the war the way he did. To me, just telling the actual reality is more dramatic. That's a better story. And I just feel that way about so much in this movie. And I think we'll talk about the ending too, but the way the music swells at the end, the way the like title cards come, or the cards that tell us like what happened to every character, it felt so weird and schmaltzy in a way that this story didn't quite like. It seemed like it deserved more than that. I feel like this movie needed somebody who had kind of a revolutionary spirit to tell the story. Maybe like a Spike Lee, somebody who I think could do more justice to this story, and I don't feel like it was done very well. So that's me. I think I'm just so annoyed about certain aspects of it. It's not a bad movie, but it does seem like it woefully undersells this story and these characters.
Jeff Kanata?
Well, I guess my thoughts about this movie are best summed up in the form of a limerick, Dave.
Wow, putting the Dave at the end there. Interesting.
Yeah. It's Aaron Sorkin, so of course it's great. But what you learn about 1968 is the people in power want us to cower. Ain't nothing changes but the date.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, huh, Jeff?
I disagree with virtually everything Da Vinci just said. I mean, the movie really worked for me, and it worked for me because it's about now. It's about today. And it fucking sucks that it's about today. I mean, it is about this trial. And from what I understand, Sorkin used quite a bit of actual transcript from the trial. Obviously, he has his dialogue moments, and they are what I come for, right? They are. I mean, I love Aaron Sorkin. There's no screenwriter alive that I am more in awe of, and I'm just a fan of language and the use of language. And I've said it many times before, but I will say it again. I think Aaron Sorkin writes action sequences with words, right? He writes a scene that is basically the climactic battle sequence, but it's a turn of phrase instead of an explosion, right? Instead of a car chase, it's a brilliantly constructed thesis statement. And I am so there for that. That is my dream. Like it is, you know, the most eloquent people, the smartest people working at the top of their game all the time. And I love that. I love watching it. I love being around it. I love the expression of it. And so, yes, perhaps this can feel a bit pat because everyone seems to say the perfect thing at the perfect time. But to me, that is in much the way Steve Jobs' movie was, that is sort of distilling down the feelings and thoughts and moments into something more pure. It is getting at the heart of what is being expressed and what happened by saying it in the most efficient and eloquent way. And I love that. I love it. And I totally understand if it doesn't work for others, or if it feels too perfect, too packaged, or too, you know, the words
You
are.
can see the artifice of this movie. I feel like that's the main thing. Is that he's been packaging these stories for so long, and now we can see like, oh, we know why he chose this particular actor, or why the music is swelling at this moment. To me, it just doesn't feel organic in a way. It feels like a packaged Aaron Sorkin story, sort of like The Thing. What was it? The movie preview that we had seen in that movie. You could
Are you
just
talking
skip
about?
me right now.
I know you're talking about the Robert Zemeckis takedown
Yes,
in
the Zemeckis takedown.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And the end of this movie is literally that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind someone standing up and reading 215,000 American names that are dead because of COVID right now. I certainly wouldn't mind that. I think it is. To me, the movie worked. The cast is extraordinary. I really hadn't looked up all the people that were in it, so each new person that came up, I was like, that is one of my favorite actors of all time. Mark Rylance is stunning in this. I'm a huge fan of Mark Rylance. And then Michael Keaton shows up, and you're like, fucking Michael fucking Keaton's in this movie. Holy shit. And you know, I think it educates hopefully a generation of people about this. It certainly educated me in aspects of it that I wasn't aware of, got me inspired to look it up and read more about it. And because the reason for that is because it is absolutely applicable to what we are going through today. It is absolutely applicable to the chambers of power exerting their will, and young people who are sick of it and see people dying in the streets, dying overseas in this case, stand up and say, we have to have our voices heard. We have to be heard here. And we have to figure out some way to make our case to the halls of power. And I mean, this movie is about all the ways that power can be exerted to silence those voices and to minimize those voices. And we see that on the news every fucking day of 2020. It is a direct one-to-one. And you know, I kept thinking through this movie, like, man, if Twitter was around in 1968, I wonder if everybody would be saying how wild 2020 is. Yeah, I mean, I understand what 2020 is pretty wild. I'm not diminishing that. But holy shit. Yeah, I mean, you talk about how this movie starts and the dominoes of events that lead to it, and all of the chaos and insanity. And yeah, all of us have to stay home and wear masks and not go out and try to save one another. But everyone that's under 30 years old isn't wondering if they're being shipped overseas to die. Like, that's pretty fucking insane too. And it really put into perspective this reality that we're living in now that seems so surreal. It was ever thus. It was ever thus because it is the halls of power exerting their will and doing things. And I was stirred by this movie. I was moved by this movie. I was motivated. And I think the ways the movie wants you to be motivated and the way the characters depicted, I think, hoped people would be motivated. And I think the reason for that is because everyone in it speaks their case in an eloquent way, in an Aaron Sorkin-y kind of wistful, hopeful way. And I am down for that, man. There are very few Aaron Sorkin scripts I've ever seen that haven't moved me to tears. And it's not because they're sad. It's because they're so powerful and hopeful. And this idea that there is this virtue that we can strive for, that is something that I need to hear more and more now. And I think this movie was a success, and I really, really loved it.
First of all, I think we should just go full, like we should just be spoilers at this
Yeah,
point. I'll put a
yeah.
little note at the beginning of the episode being like, I think we've already given away some things. So appreciate that defense of the film, Jeff. I fall somewhere between you two. So yeah, we're in spoiler territory at this point, but I'll say that I think that I really enjoyed this movie as well. I had a great time with it. I thought it had one of the worst movie endings I've seen in the last year.
Good God. Yeah.
Thought that was just god awful, but everything leading up to that point, I was really, really inspired by. I agree that it's quite relevant for everything that we're going through this year. And I've been trying to think about like what it is Aaron Sorkin is trying to say about our society with his movies and with his work in general. And I think what we see with shows like The West Wing and with movies like this, and even with movies like Molly's Game, is that the institutions of the state can often be turned towards its against its citizens in really unfair ways. So he is not idealistic about institutions, because we see here fairly terrifying acts of police brutality. We see probably one of the most unflattering depictions of a judge that I've ever seen in a film. And so
by
he's
all
not,
accounts, pretty accurate. Evidently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but he's not like, oh man, remember when judges were honorable? Remember when we could trust the police? He's not like that, right? That's not what this movie's about. So he's not nostalgic about or optimistic or like naive about these institutions of state. What he does believe in is the power of the individual to change things, right? That if people stand up and do what is right, that they can effect change, that they can stand against the institution that is trying to destroy them, and they will be triumphant. And I do think that's like a valuable message. I also think that one of the other things about this movie that's interesting, that diverges relatively in a big way from some of his other films, is Aaron Sorkin, despite being a liberal, in my opinion, is very conservative. And what I mean by that is, check out The Newsroom, check out The West Wing, right? It's all about like, hey, remember when there was like, white dudes that could just tell us what the news was, and it was like cool, and that was better than what it is today, just going off the few episodes of The Newsroom I watched in season 1, of course. But I would defy you to dispute that characterization of what that show is.
No. But a liberal who is kind of conservative, so like he is very centrist in his views, and that's
right.
Perfectly fine.
He wants
but
it
I
to
think
basically
we're seeing the limits of that.
What I sense is, in general, he quote unquote wants things to go back to the way things were. In general, that is an undercurrent through much of his work. But this is the first film I've seen that really markedly deviates from that, right? Where I would argue that the two main characters, or really the movie becomes about the conflict between Tom Hayden and Sacha Baron Cohen's character. What's his name?
Abby Hoffman. Yeah.
Sacha
Abby
Baron
Hoffman.
Cohen's character.
Abby Hoffman.
Abby Hoffman, right. So those two, who by the way, Sacha Baron Cohen is like pushing 50, I think, and Abby Hoffman was like in his 30s when the movie came out, so there's a little bit of a interesting age differential there. But anyway, it's about those two characters, but they're both presented as not equally, but like they're both presented as plausible or viable paths to take when you're fighting for progressive politics, in my opinion. And that, in my opinion, is like a big change. Because in like a 10 years ago Aaron Sorkin movie, the Abby Hoffman character would have been like purely a source for like a object of ridicule, I think. And I don't think that's the case in this movie. So
I don't know if I agree with this assessment that he's been an advocate for going back to some sort of previous generation. I think he's an advocate for competence. I've always read it as passionately pro competent and people who are serious and take their responsibility seriously. I mean, Jeff Daniels' character in the newsroom is a conservative, right? Is a right wing dude, but he stands up for American values because he is so uncompromisingly good at what he does. Like that, I think that is, to me, that's what has always been so stirring about Aaron Sorkin's work, is that he's just enamored with people who are really fucking good at what they do. I think that's why he was drawn to Steve Jobs.
I'm going to say I think we're both right, Jeff. You know, I was reading Emily Vanderwerf, her newsletter today, and she wrote the following about Aaron Sorkin. She says, Sorkin's blend of screwball pizzazz, showbiz savvy, and romantic idealism feels straight out of a Frank Capra movie, but he's always trying to talk about what's important right now. That's why The West Wing and The Social Network hit the zeitgeist so dead on. They were once modern and deeply traditional, the sorts of things that could be enjoyed equally by people from all sorts of ages and walks of life. But Sorkin's art is rooted in a fundamentally myopic view of the world, and his own worldview might be just as myopic. In Aaron Sorkin's world, the system is more or less okay, and the only thing that's wrong with everything is that we no longer listen to the people who know how to run that system. If we just stepped back and listened to the elites who used to make things hum, well, wouldn't we be a whole lot happier? End quote.
Yep.
That strikes me as pretty dead on, you know, and I think that overlaps with what you're saying as well, which is like, why aren't we just listening to the smart people? You know, like we should be listening to the smart people who know things, and often those smart people who know things are the people that used to run things. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but
it's a trap in the way that you get stuck thinking that competence, like you're saying, Jeff, is like, oh, that is the only way we could do things. Because I think back to how much like Josh Lyman makes fun of anybody, the eco warriors in the West Wing, or anybody like who is slightly more progressive than him. I just think back to things like that. This movie, like I want to feel these things you're feeling, Jeff, but I can see the stage play that they set up for, you know, the West Wing reunion. I can see how all these pieces put together. I can see why you set, you know, this movie stars Eddie Redmayne as like the guy who's trying to work within the system to affect change, and why you get freaking Borat as the hippie who has a completely opposite view. I just feel like a lot of this, like the script is probably stronger than the way it was put together. I'm thinking of like what works so well about The Social Network is Aaron Sorkin's insight and his dialogue and the way he sets, you know, these sharp verbal battles together. But also that movie was, you know, put together by a master in another way. Like it was directed by David Fincher, and he understands how to tell these stories in a very different way too. Like I feel like throughout this entire movie, I was waiting for it to begin. Throughout the first hour of this movie, I kept checking my watch because it almost felt like I don't know when this movie is actually gonna get going in the way like an Aaron Sorkin story does. So it just kind of felt like, even though the script had a certain amount of momentum, I don't think the direction did, or the actual, like, you know, the setup of the story or anything did either.
I mean, I disagree with most of that as well. You know, I probably join Jeff in his disagreement of that. What I will agree with you about I don't even know if you're saying this actually, but what I will say, I
Yeah.
think is a problem with the movie is, like, first of all, I think it gets started really early on. You're like 15 minutes in, you're already at the court trial. So I think I felt the
Yeah.
momentum for sure. I think that the biggest problem with the movie is because it is the trial of Chicago 7, technically 8 if you count Bobby Seale.
Yep.
The movie is just all over the place in terms of whose perspective it's focusing on. When the movie begins, it starts from Joseph Gordon-Levitt's perspective. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking to myself, oh, we're gonna learn Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Richard Schultz. This movie is gonna be about him and how he starts as like a very conservative kind of government loyal to the government kind of guy, and then he realizes like how the thing he's doing is really shitty, and he comes around, and then like 10 minutes later, his perspective is completely dropped, and like we
Yeah.
basically never come back to it until the end. And it's really just a function of the fact that I think he really tried to give each person in the story a little bit of screen time, a little bit of an arc. And as a result of all of the number of characters and wanting to keep it at like 7 characters, plus the people they know, plus the lawyers, it really does end up, I think, shortchanging almost all the characters.
Mhm.
And so I felt like it was a little bit all over the place, unfortunately, just because of how ambitious it was. But I didn't feel the way you felt about it, Devindra. I felt like it was still had a lot of momentum, and I hugely enjoyed watching it. I had a great time with it, and I was riveted, and I thought the cast was overall great. The accents were terrible, in my opinion. But like Sacha Baron Cohen's accent is just, and also Jeremy Strong playing the hippie. I never felt
I
like
don't know what Jeremy Strong
I
is
never
doing
felt
here.
like that's Jerry Rubin. I felt like that's Jeremy Strong doing a hippie accent. But Jeff, what do you think?
There's Jeremy Strong doing Tommy Chong, basically. But yeah.
Jeremy Strong was fine. I agree that Sacha Baron Cohen really was trying to lay on that Chicago thing. And every time we talk about the
it was a
pack,
Bostonian accent, I believe.
Whatever. Every
He's
time we
from
talk about
he's from
the
Worcester.
pack.
He's from
That's what
Worcester.
he
Yeah.
said. That's what he said. Whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't impressed with Sacha Baron Cohen's accent work, but it didn't distract me from enjoying the movie. And I thought his performance was fine. I thought his performance was great. I mean, he brought that sort of unpredictable kind of gleam in the eye to which Abby Hoffman seemed to have. Right, he was a wild card that you never knew what he was going to do. And there are some wonderful flourishes that happen where the movie is describing an event from 3 different perspectives at once. One with Abby Hoffman on stage, kind of doing a stand-up routine, recounting what happens. One, in the context of the courtroom, and another, with actual flashback footage. It was, I don't know. I thought the movie. I felt like I was shot out of a cannon watching this movie, and it breezed by. By the time it ended, I agree with you guys. The ending feels abrupt, but only because I could have watched 5 more hours of it. I was just like, keep me in this room with these people and I want to know how this all goes. And it was wild. I mean, I know the trial was, 6 months long, but you're in this movie and it's like, you just got to the courtroom and it's like day 47. You're like, what? Day 47? Well, I don't know. I wanted more and more and more. I just ate it up. I thought it was fantastic, and it just was so relevant
Were
today.
you really a fan of the ending, Jeff? Like, did you really think that was good? I'm just curious.
I thought it was a little unsatisfying because it attempted to come to a positive conclusion that it actually moved the needle by doing that, rather than it's kind of a difficult thing because the truth of what happened is pretty unsatisfying from a movie perspective, which is they all got 5 years except those other 2 dudes. And then it went to appeal, and it never was retried in appeals, and they all, it was fine. So that the truth of that, the fact of that, is kind of hard to dramatize. Right. So
the victory being they got out on appeal. It's like not super satisfying.
Not even like there was an appeal trial that they won,
right,
or a settlement that they won. The prosecutors just declined to retry it at appeal. Right. Yeah. They declined to bring the charges. So that's a hard thing to make a triumphant ending of a movie moment. But I will say that the idea of reading out the names thousands of names in court. I did not like the camera pulling back and Frank Langella like miming the
I will have order in this courtroom.
Yeah,
order.
I know that was a little overly theatrical, even for me, who loves theatricality. But
It just
I didn't
I
mar
thought
the
we
movie
had
for me.
I thought we had stopped like slow clapping is something we have been making fun of as a society for years. So it's just the idea of like this guy did something and then people like slow clap their way into the full plot. It just is like, this is awful. It just is. I was stunned that it was in the same movie as everything I had seen previously, which overall I thought, as with you, Jeff, I thought had been very skillful. So it was just a very sour note to end an otherwise solid movie that I would recommend to people. But anyway.
I mean, I was more objecting to its abruptness of like I felt like I was on this freight train and then all of a sudden the movie's over.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any real sort of satisfying conclusion there. But, it's kind of a cynical thing to point out that, we've been slow clapping. That to me wasn't as heinous a move as it seems to be to you guys.
You're still secretly a fan of the slow clap, is what I'm hearing, Joe.
Yeah, I think that's what this
you still
really
like a good slow clap.
To.
An earned slow clap. Yeah, I felt it was earned. I felt that moment was earned. I did not enjoy the long pullback camera shot because Frank Langella, it clearly was told like keep banging that gavel for 5 full minutes, and he just you could see him sort of give up halfway through, But
yeah. I'm glad you liked it, Jeff. I figured you might, because I think you like idealistic things.
I do.
And I watch, American Murder: The Family Next Door. So we like different things.
To each his own.
To each his own. I mean, I like the movie quite a lot as well. I definitely liked it more than Devindra, and I do think it's very prescient. I do think it's good to know. It is a good reminder that many of the battles that are being fought today were fought previously as well. And that the American justice system can be incredibly racist, and that's something that I think is worth.
Not just racist, dude. Not just, I mean, yes, but also it wants to hold on to power. It wants to preserve its own power. And part of that is ensuring racism so that other people, other kinds of people, other groups of people can't grasp at its power. But it is equally as dismissive and destructive to white males that want to disrupt the system or are a threat to its power. The systems
I'm
want
gonna
to retain
agree with
their
every.
power.
I'm going to agree with
equally,
every
Jeff.
word
I
there
would-
except
yeah.
equally, Jeff. But
I would
yes.
not
Well,
say equally,
okay.
Jeff. Like, listen, like Bobby Seale, we see him.
all
We
right.
see him get bound and gagged in the movie. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character has his moral fiber moment where he gets to be the one who comes in and basically helps to save the guy because he does not agree to this, which I don't know if that's actually how that went down. But then he's out and we never hear from him again. We don't hear from the Black Panthers really. Like, we see a bit afterwards, but not really much. Like, for me, this is the problem of idealizing politics right now, or at least the way Aaron Sorkin does it, where it's like it is the smart white guys who will come and save the day and figure it all out. And it's not that simple. Look at the news this year. It is not that simple. And I feel like this is a movie that is made to appeal to everybody who looked at the Black Lives Matter marches and were more worried about the property damage than the message that was actually being shown and that people were actually trying to convey. I don't think this movie understands that. That's why I don't think this movie, it has elements of what's going on today, but it definitely feels like a movie that was conceived last year before, everything erupted the way it did this year. That's all. So it doesn't feel like the movie of the moment. It feels like the movie of several years ago to me. Glad you enjoyed it, Jeff. I want something more. I want something.
It's a pretty vicious charge to level at it. I'm not personally offended by it. I'm just surprised to hear it. I don't understand what that the movie is. It seems like a movie made for people that were more worried about the property damage than, like, I don't know what part of the movie gives you that impression? What?
Well, I think the way, like the thing I just described, of even simplifying the Bobby Seale story, but also it, the coalition of people we see involved in these protests are not people of color, really. It uses the Black Panthers kind of as props early on, but doesn't really go into their side of the story or what's actually being told. So no, to me, it feels too pat. And I think the ending, I was not shocked by the ending, because to me the ending felt like, well, this is exactly what is going to happen in this movie, because I don't think this movie started off well, and I think so much of the way it was constructed, as they were trying to like lead up through the trial and do everything, I don't feel like it was well told. That's all. Like I don't I am just not satisfied with it. So it's not a personal thing. It's just I feel like this is a movie that feels like a story that should have been told by somebody who is maybe a little more pointed in their commentary, rather than the guy that's trying to argue for, let's get everything back to normal and then we'll be all right.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it there. I personally see valid points in both of what you guys are saying. So I appreciate the dialogue, and the Trial of Chicago 7, I think, is worth checking out. It's on Netflix right now. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of the podcast. Find more episodes at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from adamwarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. Check out his YouTube channel. Our weekly plugs music comes from Noah Ross, with derivatives from other people like Thomas Medina, as well as Cody Vandenberg this week. And this episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Next week, we'll be reviewing another Sacha Baron Cohen movie, Borat 2. Borat 2.
This is the one where he does the Chicago accent.
Yeah,
I got that right.
Yes. The short version of it is Borat subsequent movie film. So that's what we'll be referring to it, Borat subsequent movie film. But that's what is on store for next week's episode of the /Filmcast. So we will see you next week. All right, stick around.
All right. I'm going to run to the bathroom. Be right back. Just keep the window open.
It sounded like we need to keep the window open because of what he's doing in the bathroom.
Did you see this Jeffrey Toobin thing today?
Fucking everybody's a freak, I guess. Everybody's a freak, Dave.
Yep.
There's one thing I know about
we're still
everybody,
broadcasting live,
they're
by
a
the way.
freak.
Just FYI.
Yeah. You're a freak, right, Dave? Everybody loves to get freaky. All too much. All too much.
What'd you say?
Said it's all too much. Everything.
What is?
World, life, everything.
Okay, I'm back.
Jeff, can I like start a new recording before the old one has finished uploading?
Yes.
I don't want to.
You absolutely can. Well, then don't.
Let's wait 1 minute.
You've listened to DLC a number of times, right, David?
Frequently.
Do you can be honest, I won't be offended. Do you think
hate
that
it.
the audio quality
I hate it.
Do you think the audio quality is poor?
Why don't we talk about this when we're not broadcasting?
I don't care.
No, I don't think the audio is poor, but I think it could be improved in some ways. Why?
Because I don't use waves, and I output the show at 64 kilohertz, and
that would be the thing. That would be the thing.
I think small files are. I don't think anybody cares.
You're killing your beautiful new microphone, Jeff. Like
Yeah,
that breaks my
You're
heart.
just murdering that thing. You're
murdering
Jeff.
it, man.
I think people would rather download a small file than anything else when it comes to podcasts.
Doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, we got that 5G now. I forgot.
Bandwidth flows like water.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna go to the bathroom in the next 10 seconds,
Go for it.
and then when I get
We
back,
don't know where. We don't know where it's happening, but okay. Hello, chat.
Ugh. All right. And we're good.
Okay.
Running post production. Should I start a new recording or should I do a new episode? No, let's just do a new recording in this one, right? Jeff?
Yeah, a new recording is what I would do.
Okay. All right. What is it officially called? The West Wing Reunion? There's no official title,
For
I guess.
voting.
A West Wing special to benefit when we all vote.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Oh shit. So, are you guys still there?
Yep.
Devin, are you there?
I don't
Yep.
see the number ticking up though. Did you?
Yeah, I guess I don't know what happened when I pressed start recording. It like bumped me into this other interface.
Did you start a new recording?
I tried to say new. Oh, I did new
And you-
recording. It did new recording,
Yeah.
and then
You do-
okay.
So do you know where now you have to push record?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Got it. And 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast After Dark. Not only the Slash Filmcast After Dark, the first one we're doing to kick off our brand new
boy.
Patreon at patreon.com/filmpodcast. Thank you, patrons. If you're listening to this, you're a patron.
Wow.
And that's amazing. This is our first foray into the Patreon bonus content. So welcome to the
And
new Patreon.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so for those who are curious of how this works, if you go to patreon.com/filmpodcast and you have already subscribed, you will get this in a personal RSS feed. You just go to the page, click on My Membership, and then put the feed that is the RSS feed that's there into your podcast app, and you'll be able to subscribe to the bonus feed where we'll put all the After Dark episodes, the ad-free episodes. It's all going to go into that feed. And if you're a patron, you're going to get all this stuff early before everyone else for the first couple months. And then after January, you're going to be the only person getting the After Darks. But for the first couple months, we'll be giving the After Darks away just a little bit later. So today, for our very first After Dark, we are going to be talking about a West Wing special to benefit When We All Vote, which recently aired on HBO Max. Now, Jeff Kanata, you said this was your favorite thing that you would watch this year.
Yeah, and I'm already worried about where this is going based on our conversation about trial of the
for Trial of
Chicago
Chicago 7.
7.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it's a reminder of when he made good things. That's good, right?
So this, I'll be honest, I had no idea what this was going to be, and
Same, yeah.
also like I had seen some, I have seen some pretty hit or miss quarantine content being produced, right? Like I've seen like some cast reunions, and some of them have been.
There's dude, you throw a rock and you get a cast reunion right now. It's cast reunion here, cast reunion there. Everything's a cast reunion, and it's kind of amazing. Like everybody is sitting around doing nothing, And all it takes is a Josh Gad to call you up and make it happen, evidently.
Yeah, it takes a Josh and so there's all these cast reunions going on. Some of them are like pretty rough, gonna be honest. Like some of them are like pretty cringy. And so I was like, I have no idea what this is gonna be. I actually originally thought it was a net new play that Aaron
Well,
Sorkin had written for this event.
Somebody described it to me as a staged reading. Now, as someone who
It turns out we're both wrong. We're both wrong.
Someone who has been in a lot of staged readings. I have done a lot of staged readings all over the place. This ain't no staged reading.
Yes.
This is a full production of this is not, there's some cast reunions where they're all sitting around looking at scripts, sitting at a table, reading back the lines that we all heard them. No. This is fully produced, well filmed, fully costumed. Everyone's off book. Everyone is, there's large set pieces. It's done inside the Orpheum Theater here in Los Angeles, but for no audience, but it is done as a very grand stage play production of a script that was a TV show.
So it is season 3, episode 14 of The West Wing, Hartsfield's Landing. It's a very appropriate episode because it's
perfect.
It's a episode, like the episode itself is supposed to benefit, or I should say, the reunion special is supposed to benefit When We All Vote, what is it, nonpartisan or bipartisan?
I think it's bipartisan.
Bipartisan institution. And I have to say, I thought the little interstitials were kind of hilarious because
I thought they were the best part of the whole thing, man. I loved them.
Well, they were great, but also this thing is like When We All Vote is bipartisan, and so they're speaking out. They're like, "Hey, you got to vote," and like ignore the people who are trying to take away your vote. And it's like, there's only one party that's trying to take away your vote. Okay,
I wonder which one.
There's only one party that's making it more difficult for people to vote. And so even though it's a bipartisan organization, it's like they're really only for one party.
But isn't it wonderful that at some point a bipartisan organization was created to get more people to vote?
I agree.
Like I think that is I mean, we were talking a lot in our main episode about the trial, about this idea of wanting things to go back to a certain place. There is something wonderful about the idea of people from both sides of the aisle coming together and going, you know what, one thing we can agree on, more people voting is good. I wouldn't mind returning to that notion.
Yes, I think I understand.
Again,
why you're
some people, Jeff, the idea of voting, there's a reason, and they even go over this in the episode, why a lot of folks have been trying to stop people from voting. So
I'm well aware.
That is the organization. It's great. I love the organization for that.
Right.
So all right. So anyway, anyway, Jeff, why did you love this episode so much? Or this execution of the episode?
I mean, I love theater. I am a theater creation. I am a creature of the theater. I love theatricality, as we've kind of talked about already this episode, or the episode that we talked about today. And I love the idea of re-examining a teleplay, a telescript, on stage and shooting it and embracing the theatricality of the stage. I thought it brought a wonderful energy and life and sort of a celebration of the way that this TV script works verbally with language, how it uses language, how it uses place, how it uses juxtaposition between characters. I just thought they pulled it off in such a beautiful way that made you understand why Aaron Sorkin started in the theater, right? He brought that sensibility to television and film. And I love that. I love the aesthetic of that. I love all the little bits that we see that are sort of bridging into what were commercial breaks of people standing in the wings, standing, looking at their script, laughing with one another, standing next to the pulleys for the curtains, and just the theatrical nature of this event, and everyone's standing around using masks. And I loved seeing these wonderful actors gray and older. 20 years since this episode aired,
Man.
and they all fit back into their roles like an old shoe, like a beautiful, comfortable pair of sneakers. And it was lovely to see, CJ back being CJ. And man, like they got all of the little day players, all of the people who actually did those one-line
That's what really
parts.
got me. It's like I have not seen these people in over a decade because I haven't seen any West Wing since then. So it was certainly great to see them back.
Anna Devere Smith as the Secretary of State, I think. I think that's what she is. I mean, everybody was there. It really was. It felt like somebody got on the phone and literally just called up everybody who was in and says, "Hey, you want to be part of this?" I loved all that.
The phone call was, "Hey, we gotta save the country. You in?"
Yeah. Right.
No, and Anna Devere Smith was National Security Advisor, by the way. FYI.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Just that nostalgia trip of revisiting these people, but and how well they were back, like it just and seeing Sterling K. Brown step in and just knock it out of the park was wonderful. But more than that, it was two things. One was this focus on the words and sentiment of this particular episode, which I found to be really inspiring and on point for the message that they were trying to convey, which is, hey, it's important to vote, and hey, being smart about stuff is pretty important, and let's all, do this in a smart way and care, and everybody, and the place that that Bradley Whitford's character gets to at the end, which is sort of like, people need to vote, and we're not supposed to tell them how. They're just supposed to exercise that and do it for themselves. I found to be very powerful. But as I said, even more than all of that, I mean, I just layer upon layer upon layer of love for this thing. As I said, it's my favorite thing I've watched all year. I was bawling throughout the entire thing just because of who I was when I watched this originally 20 years ago and how much this show meant to me at that time. I haven't really revisited this episode in a long, long time, many, many years. And just like all of those feelings stirred up. But then these interstitials, right? These interstitials that I found to be so perfectly concise and addressing a very specific thing about what's going on in our world today, doing it with humor, but also just a razor sharp incision into exactly what the issue is here. Like, don't talk about the fact that mail-in voting is going to be a fraud. Here's exactly why it's not. Here's exactly why we need a more diverse voting block. Here's like all these things just so perfectly and I think motivationally expressed. I adored the whole process. I found it to be a reinforcement of all these ideals. As you read that tweet, I think on our show, not on this After Dark, but you read that tweet that I posted, which is, it's what I love about the craft of acting. It's what I love about writing and storytelling. How these themes, these ideals that I believe in, that I think are still possible in the world, can be galvanized through art and drama and conveyed in a way that is palatable and that is inspiring. And also this idea of civic duty, which is something I believe in strongly, have believed in my entire adult life. All of that wrapped in this very appealing package that was a bow of nostalgia on top. It just was an utter surprise and something I found to be very, very special.
It's interesting you say that about the interstitials. The morning after I watched this reunion special, I tweeted something quite flip, which I know is very unlike me.
Don't do that.
I said, I don't know who's in the Venn diagram intersection of people watching a filmed stage reading of the West Wing episode Hartsfield Landing and people who aren't going to vote. But I can guarantee you the actors of the West Wing are doing everything possible to reach them.
I wish they would just break out those interstitials and release them like on YouTube or just email them to every American. I would appreciate that.
Right. Well, so several people pointed out to me that this episode is unlikely to get people to vote who weren't going to already vote, but what it will do is it can arm people who are voting and who are civically engaged with talking points, with information that they can use to dispute your uncle at Thanksgiving or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that it does give you actually useful information that you can use in your daily life.
Oh, I love that line that they said, like, what's to stop, a foreign country from printing up a whole bunch of ballots? He goes, the same thing that stops them from printing up $1 trillion of U.S. currency and buying the U.S. Navy. It's the same thing. I love that line. It's like, fuck yeah, that's why Sorkin wrote all that shit.
Yeah. It was great.
Like, those bits, by the way, and this whole thing reminded me of when he was great. When nobody could touch Aaron Sorkin. And yeah, Dave, when we were watching these episodes in college, all I remember is like, God damn, this is the smartest man alive. He he just writes words like nobody's business. He creates these great characters. He is so smart in terms of how he tells these stories. Like the way the chess match works in this episode, I think is just kind of brilliant. And
chess matches.
Yes,
chess matches,
playing multiple chess
simultaneously,
including the chess match with that dead guy that he talked about.
Oh man, and then he breaks your heart. Like he does all these things and he does it all at the same time. And man, so it was really great to revisit this episode. But those interstitials, I think, were truly fantastic. And I think some of his best writing, like him writing, I wonder how much of what he wrote for Samuel L. Jackson. I wonder how much of that was him, because it was just like perfect understanding Samuel L. Jackson's voice. And
you just know that Samuel L. wanted to sprinkle in some motherfuckers in there, but they kept those out.
He wanted to do his thing, but
they kept those
just
out.
Really knowing how to use him as like an instrument to convey these messages, and really for all of these folks too, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think it's fantastic. Michelle Obama is great, but
my favorite one, honestly, my favorite one of the interstitials, honestly, was the one with Elizabeth Moss and Dule Hill.
Loved it.
Where they're talking about
them for so long. Come on.
they're like, do you might not think you care about politics, but you care about politics. You're like, do you care about X? Do you care about Y? Do you care about Z? Then you care about politics. And like, that's I really appreciate it. That was like the most powerful one to me, because it's like there's so much civic disengagement right now, right? There's so many people who have lost hope, and what they don't understand is that like a vote can still make a difference, which is what this whole episode's trying to communicate, but B, that it is so important who is in office, you know what I mean? And I think that's what that little interstitial
they are not the same. Both parties are not the same. Let's just make this absolutely clear. How about that? Yeah.
So any other thoughts, Devendra, before I launch into my stuff?
I mean, listen, I think this was a well shot thing too, for something on stage. Like they make the walk and talk work on stage. I like how they
so
made the
cinematic
work.
I thought it was so cinematic. It's like
it's Thomas Schlamme who directed many episodes of the actual show, who directed evidently the stage version
brought
too.
the show back after Sorkin had to go. I wonder how he feels coming back to this too.
It was like, it
he
reminded
did not
me
leave that show in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, know what's hilarious was I watched it with my friend. I watched, me and my friend Carter are now in a bubble, COVID bubble, and or quarantine pod, as I've seen it now being referred to, and it's pretty rough. Jeff, come up with something better, Jeff. I beg of you, come up with something better.
He's on your poets. He's on your quarantine.
Nice. Also, Carter is
so much better.
Carter is a she, FYI. But
sorry.
But we watched it together at your recommend. Like literally that night, Jeff. You texted us, or you texted me and Devendra, and you're like, "This is my favorite thing I've seen all year." So I texted Carter. I'm like, "It's 11 p.m. Do you want to come over and watch the West Wing thing?" She came over. We watched it, and we were watching the opening where it's like the amazing, gorgeous cover of the theme song comes on. So beautiful, so moving,
so amazing,
so beautiful.
Live music on stage, incredible.
My wife started crying when she saw I played it for her. She has no attachment to the West Wing. She's seen 2 episodes in her whole life.
Wow.
And she was shaking with tears. And I think the reason she later explained is
Because you invited that other girl over to watch the show.
no, it's because the image of this guy in this empty auditorium is a striking visual of like, and these people, they all sacrificed. Every one of these people sacrificed to make this because they all had strict COVID protocols. You see, like, I would be so interested to see like what the protocols were. But you see them like with like face masks. You see all the crew. They're all every single one of the crew has both a face shield and a face mask on, right?
And there's like no unnecessary interaction with the actors too, right? Like everyone's kind of cordoned off in their scenes.
Yeah, so it's just like, but the image of this guitarist playing this gorgeous theme song in an empty theater was for my wife a testament to how difficult it is to make art right now. And how much you have to give up to make art right now.
Yeah,
and it's it was just beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, so anyway, you see all these amazing images of these lovely images of people having fun and like Martin Sheen and Sterling K. Brown. Then you see Aaron Sorkin and he looks like like he's had a really long day. You know what I mean? And I'm just like,
it's had a really long year, like all of us.
Yeah. He just looks like, I'm done with this, Yeah, and it was just funny.
Just when I thought I was out.
It was funny the little video they chose to show him is what I'm saying. Given what you guys were talking about. So I like this episode. The episode is very idealistic. It's it's kind of there's an actual place. You guys know about this? So it's based on I think Dixville Notch. There's another one that's like Hart's Landing or something like that. That's also like probably what the name was based off. But this midnight vote thing is an actual thing that happens in New Hampshire. Dixville Notch is like one of the most popular. Like it's very well known to happen at this place, and it's kind of this this vision of like, hey. Democracy at its heart is a beautiful. It doesn't need to be complicated. It can be simple, and it is still beautiful, right? That just like these townspeople, they come together, they put pieces of paper in a box, they decide who's going to be their leader, and there's something really beautiful about that, and that's what this episode is trying to kind of bring to life. At the same time, the B story is. China encroaching on Taiwan, who's trying to hold democratic elections. It always kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way that like this China and Taiwan storyline took place because like Taiwan had been holding elections for many years by the time the episode came out. So it's just kind of like, you're kind of relying on people not knowing what's going on in Taiwan for the episode to really work. But putting that aside, I really think this is not my favorite West Wing episode, but like one of the top ones, right? Because
it's a good one to like just bring people in to be like, hey, what makes the West Wing good?
Right.
It's this.
It's soaring idealistic visions of democracy and also men and their daddy issues, which is really what comprises most of this episode. But I mean, Aaron Sorkin knows how to write those things really, really well. And so I had a good time with it. And I will tell you this also, okay, which is that I recently wanted to watch some old episodes of The West Wing to kind of catch up in advance of this thing. And let me tell you that I was expecting when I watched the episodes, my feeling would be, oh my gosh, like, oh, remember what the person I was back then and how idealistic I was and how idealistic we all were? There's this idea of when you think of House of Cards and you think of Veep, people describe it as a post-hope politics, right? Like, there's nothing hopeful about any of these visions of America. And The West Wing was very hopeful. It wasn't even post-Clinton. It was during the Clinton era. 1999, I think the first episode of The West Wing came out. And I was thinking that when I watch these old episodes, my feeling would be, oh, hey, great. Remember the person I was, all nostalgic, and I'd be filled with warmth and pleasantness. But really the feeling I was left with, by the way, was absolute terror. Because what I had forgotten was Aaron Sorkin did such a good job of writing all the challenging situations the president of the United States is in. Like, hey, 30 people just showed up in a storage container from Cuba. What are we going to do with them? Hey, forces have aligned, like nuclear missiles are lined up in Kashmir, whatever scenario. And what was great about The West Wing is we could fantasize that an incredibly basically a genius, right? Like a hyper intelligent genius was in charge and would handle that situation with care, like with human weakness, but with care and intelligence and integrity. And The West Wing is really about people just trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
And what is terrifying about The West Wing today is watching it and imagining Donald Trump in any of those situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like literally even the situation depicted in this episode, right? Like
Yeah.
what is Donald Trump's reaction, and is he going to have the right people advising him on it? Who is his, McNally? Not someone who I want to be his McNally, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
So-
Stephen Miller.
Yeah. Do you want Stephen Miller making the decision of whether to, anyway. So
Yeah.
that was the
That
feeling
sounds
I
like
was
a good web show parody, by the way, of just West Wing episodes recast with the Trump administration. Like, goddamn, yeah.
So that was my feeling, was abject terror and less
Mhm.
less hope and optimism. But West Wing still here's what I'll also say about the West Wing. Still hugely enjoyable show, but I guess I remember like a lot of like soaring speeches that people gave, like two cathedrals or
yeah.
whatever like that. That was a
Yeah.
great speech. And when I
Amazing.
think back to the West Wing, I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of like awesome speeches like that. I actually don't think that's the case. Jeff, you described it really well in our Trial of Chicago 7 review when you said like they're action scenes but with dialogue. And it's less about soaring speeches that really make up the best of the West Wing, and it's more about intense moments between characters. Right?
Tete-a-tetes. Yeah. it is
Tete-a-tetes.
always-
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's where he thrives. Is he? I think he gives voice to an idea that he personally doesn't agree with very, very well. I think he presents the other side as strongly as he wants his side presented. And I think that's to his credit. And I've always admired Aaron Sorkin for that, is that he creates this dialogue where both sides are armed to the teeth, right? They're both very intelligent. They're both prepared, and they both fire guns blazing with their best arguments. And that to me is why they feel like action sequences. And they also makes it more compelling. It's like, it's not just, the super smart President Bartlett tramping over everybody. It's him in these very difficult situations with a lot of other people trying to figure it all out. And everybody is, not a lot of easy answers. And I've always enjoyed that about it.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, it seems like we all enjoyed this and thought it was worth checking out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely worth a watch. Yeah.
And hopefully, it gets people to vote. Or something does, because I want to believe in my government again. I mean, I understand the government itself is flawed in a lot of ways, but there can be people in government that actually want the government not to fail. I think there can be people that aren't actively dismantling it from the inside, and are using the levers of power to actually, try to do the right thing most of the time. I think we've had that from, Democratic and Republican administrations before. There have been people who actually have very different ideas about how to accomplish it, have very different ideas about what should be done, but ultimately believe they're really trying to improve people's lives. And I just don't believe that's the case right now. I just don't believe there's people who are trying to improve their own lives, and there's people who are trying desperately to win, whatever the fuck that means. But there's a lot of things wrong with government. There's a lot of things wrong with the kinds of people that are in government. But man, there's an entire group of people that can be in power and actually give a shit. And I want that to be the case again.
Here's what I'm looking forward to, Jeff. I have no idea. I mean, can you believe it? We're 2 weeks out from this election.
No, I can't. I can't believe it.
And how, I mean, who knows what the result's going to be, but I'm going to say that my life will be radically different depending on which outcome there is. Like,
I think all of ours will.
I
think our lives will be radically different 2 weeks from today, no matter what.
Yeah. I think there's a scenario where Joe Biden doesn't win by enough, and it's able to be tied up in Congress or the courts for months, and something terrible, like there's a scenario where this drags out for months. And actually, that was one of the.
I don't know if there's a scenario where this doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
true.
sure.
It's true. One scenario that would, the one scenario that actually, like, I think people have like war gamed this out actually, and the one
Yes.
scenario where this will end relatively quickly is if it's a landslide, right?
But even that,
Even that, there will still be some FUD, right? Some what is it? What does FUD stand for?
Fear, uncertainty, and
Fear,
doubt.
uncertainty, and doubt being sown by the government, for sure, right? So that's still going to happen. But I think that like we'll have a far clearer vision of what the outcome is going to be in that scenario.
Right.
Whereas if it's like close, then it will drag out for months, and we don't even know what's going to happen. So, our lives will change radically, I think, but it might take some time for that to actually happen. But here's what I'm looking forward to in the event of a Biden win: is being able to go longer than 48 hours without thinking about the U.S. government.
48, boy, I don't know how you do that, dude.
Is being able to remember
have-
there was a time when you didn't know on a daily basis.
Weeks. You would go weeks. Dude, listen, I am somebody who's been a politics wonk for my entire adult life. Like since I graduated from college, which sadly has been a while. I was like addicted to NewsHour and NPR and like politics shows, and when it wasn't everybody's religion, which it is now, it is fucking religion now. Back when it was like this kind of nerdy, very few people gave a shit, I was super into it. But there would be weeks of my life where I had no idea what the president was doing. I had no sense of a political issue or problem. That I long for that blithe, that blithe sense of just ignorance. It's just being able to take my eye off it and just be able to just check in when the important stuff is happening. You
want a competent pilot at the at the helm.
John Mulaney in his recent special described Donald Trump as a horse in a hospital, right? Like, and you would there might be like a day or two when you don't hear about what's happening with a horse in the hospital, but that worries you because you're like, what's going on? Like, why didn't I hear about the horse in the hospital? Why aren't I getting updates about the horse in the hospital today? That's weird.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that not being weird anymore. I hope that that's the case. But
I mean, another way to put it, I guess it's a similar analogy, is it's the dog flying the plane. Like, there's a point at which you are not going to take your eye off the dog flying the plane because you want to make sure you land, right? You want to make sure that if everyone doesn't die here. But there was times when he was like, "Oh no, there's a pilot piloting the plane. I can enjoy my beverage and maybe take a nap."
Did you just come up with the dog in the plane analogy, or was that something?
I just said.
You just tried to one up John Mulaney on the air here?
Wow.
I mean, I
bold,
constantly try to one up John Mulaney.
He's your nemesis, I believe. As you've described it in the past.
I'll get you, Mulaney, one of these days.
All right.
Here's the thing, too. Like, there are things we're dealing with. I don't think the outcome of the elections could be the end of it, guys. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff happening. a bunch of folks just tried to overthrow the Michigan government. Things are
which by the way, in any other year or any other era would be the defining news story of our time.
Yeah. The year's big story. Yeah.
That was below the fold,
just
dude.
Another,
below the fold on a Thursday.
Just another thing that happens. I will say, in the event of a Biden victory, I will certainly take a breath of relief. But man,
no, you're right.
I
think
right. All of this has really made it clear how fragile all of this is, and kind of how, like, I personally want to step up in whatever ways I can. So
because it's not like
I want to
just
fight for this damn place. Okay.
It's not like just because Biden is elected, all the problems will go away. It's like all the Nazis, which is a problem I thought we'd already solved by the time the Indiana Jones movies came out.
Apparently not.
They'll still be there.
Yeah.
And it's like
and they're gonna be angry. It's even worse.
They're gonna be pretty pissed. So we're gonna need to deal with the challenges.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I think for me the relief and the hope comes from maybe codifying some of the norms that we've been talking about, like all these norms that we're like, we got
turn
all
them
these
into
norms.
laws, please.
Yeah, let's make sure we write those down and get them set and maybe I don't know, enforceable in some way. That whole like, no president has ever pardoned himself before, because who would do that? It's like,
would do that?
let's write it down and make sure it's not.
I was listening to Jeffrey Toobin on a recent interview before
that
today.
was your mistake.
You can listen, you just don't want to watch.
You don't know what he was doing during that interview.
And but something he said that I thought was very insightful was the question was asked about like why what do you think about the 25th Amendment, invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office, and something that he said was like, when the founders wrote the Constitution and the people did the Bill of Rights and the amendments and stuff like that, they assumed a president that would look out for this country's self-interest or would look out for this country's interests, right? They didn't conceive of the possibility.
That's how you know the founders were not infallible, because they made assumptions.
Yes.
Along comes this fucking asshole who's like, oh yeah, all those assumptions, that works out well for me.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the kind of raw talk you're gonna get in the /Filmcast After Dark. But we hope we hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you'd appreciate it. A lot of people did write in and say like our post-election episodes really helped them to process things. But I hope that you're enjoying this kind of thing. And if you're not a patron that is getting this right now, then go to patreon.com/filmpodcast. Feel free to back us at one of our tiers where you get this content regularly delivered to your feed. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and these will be of varying lengths. This is not indicative necessarily of how long or short it will be, but you can assume that it will be a pretty in-depth discussion.
It will be enough for one complete thought.
Dave, we should at least one complete thought.
Yeah.
Dave, we should maybe vow right here and now that we will do a post-election After Dark.
If we're still here,
I can't vouch that we won't talk about that in the regular episode as well. But
true. But we will either be talking to you on some sort of plane or road trip as you flee the country, or we will all be having a normal conversation. So we should make sure that happens.
I just want to close.
That was supposed to be funny, but it was really dark.
Yeah, I was like, I don't see the humor there. As we close this first After Dark episode, I just do want to thank you all again, all the patrons who are making this episode possible. It's been so heartwarming to see so many people contribute, and every donor I interpret as somebody saying, we value what you do. We value the work that you're doing on the /Filmcast, and it means a lot. So
it is literally what they're saying. Yeah.
Yep. So thank you so much for doing that, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week for our Borat 2 review. All right? See you later, folks. All right, guys.
Uploading. All right.
That was good. I thought that was good. That was good. Good.
That was a good
Are
After
you thinking
Dark.
there'll be about a half an hour, or are you thinking there'll be more?
I would say between 20 and 40 minutes is how I feel.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Yeah?
We'll see. I'm okay. I'm definitely feeling like doing later reviews or just doing reviews late sometimes just messes with my brain. So I will be a little fuzzy sometimes, but this was good.
So let me put this out there too, which is that like sometimes, Devindra, if you're just like, I'm exhausted, you can drop off the After Dark. I think that'd be fine if it's late for you. And also like, once this thing gets going, assuming it gets going, who knows how many people will actually donate, but if it does become like a serious thing, I could see this being a thing where like you guys can go off and make your own episodes. Like Devindra, there's been times when you've like wanted to make something that where I'm like, we have no interest in watching that, or we don't have time to schedule it. But there's definitely a scenario where you're like, hey, Dave, I really want to talk about blank, and I'm like, I have no interest in this, but it would be great After Dark in the Patreon, and that'd be great if you wanted to do it.
And I think I think ultimately the less it can be about movies or TV shows, the better.
Yeah.
Right? Because it should be a departure from the show. It should be something else. We can talk about goofy things or serious things or whatever. But I think the less it's a review, probably better, because there's a show for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a show for that, and
Well,
I've done jump in episodes when you had to step out too, Dave.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well,
we
I
can
don't
make
know.
it happen.
I don't know if I agree completely with that, Jeff, because I think there's some weeks where I don't know. It depends. Like, there might be some weeks where
Mhm.
there's two things that we
Yeah.
want to cover, and
I
one
mean,
of them
this
is
was a
more
review of
important.
the West Wing special,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
so,
and this I actually think this was actually a decent use for it because there might be some things where
Yeah.
we're like we want an in-depth conversation on this thing, but it's also coming out this week. So rather
Yeah.
than give it like 5 minutes on what we've been watching, we give it a full after dark. So that's
Mhm.
how I feel about it. But
That's cool.
Yeah.
All good.
enough.
All right, good
All
show,
right.
guys.
Get
I
some
hope.
rest.
I hope the Patreon keeps growing. Seems
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
doing
for
well.
sure.
It's doing well. And Jeff, you got the ads, right?
I'm doing it right now.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
All right.
Have a good night, folks.
Good night, folks.
All right.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.